Chapter 99. Chapter 99, Thrash as usual. Chi Yong-yi and the others looked absolutely furious at this. Asking him to kneel down and lick another's shoes, what kind of great humiliation was that? If this Wei Hilo was in gushing spring tear, or a black-grade alchemist, then perhaps he would be qualified to make such unreasonable demands. But he was only a yellow-grade low-level alchemist, a martial artist at the mere level of first layer of element gathering tier. How did he get the confidence to talk so big? The people who were born in the imperial city truly acted like they were superior to anyone and everyone else. "You've gone too far!" Jin Wuji shouted immediately. "Wei Hilo, you're only a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist now, don't you think you're talking too big? You dare to go against me?" Wei Hilo smiled coldly, looking extremely confident in himself. Indeed, he was only a yellow-grade low-level alchemist now, but his future prospects were limitless. Otherwise, why would Feng Luo go out of his way to deliberately befriend him? Of course, the reason why he had befriended Feng Luo was also because of Feng Yan. If not for Feng Yan, how would he have taken a mere martial artist of element gathering tier seriously? He possessed remarkable potential in the path of alchemy, while Feng Yan could possibly become a ruler in the field of martial arts. In this world, the strongest ruled after all. No matter how awesome an alchemist grew to be, he would still need the help of a powerful warrior proficient in martial arts. Jin Wuji instantly felt the urge to hit someone. Wei Hilo was only in the first layer of element gathering tier, and from the looks of it, he had only managed to climb to this cultivation level with the help of alchemical pills. Jin Wuji would be able to easily dominate him with one hand behind his back. Furthermore, his status as a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist did not worry him at all, as there was no way that there would come a day that Jin Wuji would make any requests of an alchemist of this lowly rank. The problem was that there was a high chance that Wei Hilo may be taken in as disciple by Wu Songlin, and Wu Songlin was a black-grade high-level alchemist. Previously, they had all done Ling Han a favor by throwing their respective matches into Yuan City because there stood two black-grade low-level alchemists behind him. However, Wu Songlin was a much grander figure than those two, so the pressure they felt was obvious. Jin Wuji's expression turned dark and cold, yet he did not open his mouth to speak. "What right do you have to be so arrogant?" Bailey Tingyun was in the prime of his youth, and so was easily moved by his emotions. He was also aware that he was a citizen of Yuan City, so even if this Wei Hilo would one day become a black-grade alchemist, it would not affect him whatsoever. As a result, he naturally held no fear of offending Wei Hilo. Wei Hilo could not help showing displeasure at this, and said, "Are you challenging me? So what if I am? Do you dare to battle with me?" Bailey Tingyun said arrogantly. "Young Master Wei!" It was at this moment that another three young men joined them. These three newcomers all had a powerful aura radiating from them. They had all reached the 9th layer of element gathering tier. "So it's you guys." Wei Hilo spared a glance at them, and a faint, perfunctory smile appeared on his face. "Young Master Wei, have you encountered some kind of trouble?" one of them said with a smile. The speaker was dressed in green battle robes, and was quite tall. Wei Hilo revealed a disdainful smile, pointed at Bailey Tingyun, and said, "This guy says he wants to challenge me. Ha ha ha, where did this idiot come from, to actually dare to challenge young Master Wei?" The green-clad man laughed loudly. He crooked a finger in Bailey Tingyun's direction and said, "Come, come, come! I shall be your opponent." How could Bailey Tingyun not react to such provocation? He was just about to agree when Chi Yong-yi held him back and said, "Wen Hai Xing, when did you become so immature? An elite ranked among the top 100 actually intends to bully a junior that had just barely enrolled in the academy. So it's the King of Eternal Night." The green-clad man behaved as if he had just noticed Chi Yong-yi raised his clasped hands in the latter's direction, and said, "No wonder you dare to oppose young Master Wei. The 4th Prince of Yuan City is indeed domineering." His words appeared to be praising Chi Yong-yi, but in reality, they were an attempt to direct aggression to the latter. Wei Hili's expression immediately darkened, and he said, "So you are a noble. No wonder you are so arrogant. Since he was a child, he had already displayed outstanding talent in the field of alchemy. Everyone in his age range tried to curry his favor in order to form an amicable relationship with the great alchemist-to-be he was. When Hai Xing's words naturally caused him to feel very displeased about Qi Yongye's actions. "Ling Han, are you going to kneel or not?" Feng Luo interrupted. The person he hated the most was naturally Ling Han, and Qi Yongye was the fourth prince of Deyuan City, and was highly likely to inherit the position of Deyuan king in the future, so naturally Feng Luo was not willing to offend him. So this is the younger brother of elder brother disciple Feng Yan. When Hai Xing and his companions found out Feng Luo's identity, they all smiled immediately. Though they themselves looked down upon Feng Luo, they dared not show any disdain towards him in public. Feng Yan was too strong, and according to rumors, had the ability to challenge and join the ranks of the core disciples. One of them immediately looked towards Ling Han and said, "Brat I Xingyu am just going to say this now. If you are unable to make younger brother disciple Feng Luo satisfied, then you will only be sent back to the academy on a stretcher." "I, Mi Zhongguang, am the same," the third person said. Feng Luo was extremely proud. He laughed loudly and said, "Ling Han, do you still dare to be so unreasonable with me? Who do you think you are, to dare to put on airs in front of me? You've humiliated me repeatedly. Who do you think I am? One single finger of mine is more precious than the whole you by 10,000-fold." Wei Hele and the others smiled coldly. A mere foreign news student would naturally not be taken seriously by them. The only people they would have misgivings about going against were only the direct heirs of the 8 great clans. Outside the entrance, the 4 guards of the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion looked on with indifference. As long as no one was making trouble in the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion, then even if the sky collapsed, they would not interfere. "Kneel!" Feng Luo roared loudly. "Kneel your sister!" Ling Han reached out with his hand, which sped towards Feng Luo. "How dare you!" When Hai Xing, Mi Zhongguang, and Xingyu Xian all acted at the same time. They were all in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and were extremely strong. None of them was inferior to Qi Yongye. The simultaneous movement of all 3 was terrifyingly powerful. "Get out of my way!" Ling Han, using the exiting cloud steps, actually managed to squeeze past the restraining movements of all 3 of them. When Hai Xing and the others were all shocked, they noticed that Ling Han was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier, and so completely did not take him seriously. Who would have thought that Ling Han was actually so fast, and had such a weird way of moving? As a result, they had not used their full power, allowing Ling Han to easily break through their siege. Ling Han had already appeared in front of Feng Luo, and his extended hand was already reaching towards the ladder. "You dare!" Wei Hele slanted his body to one side to stand in front of Feng Luo. He was well aware that he was a yellow-grade low-level alchemist, and was possibly the future disciple of the headmaster of the alchemy department. So no matter how bold Ling Han was, he knew that Ling Han would not dare to touch a single hair on his head. Pa! However, his thoughts had just barely formed when a forceful slap from Ling Han smacked him out of the way. Damn, this guy really dared to hit him? Another slap from Ling Han caused Feng Luo to fall to the ground. Without waiting for him to get up, one of Ling Han's feet stepped very firmly on Feng Luo's face. "Bastard, you actually dared to step on me? You are definitely tired of living, my brother will definitely kill you. Definitely." Feng Luo wailed terribly while continuing to threaten Ling Han. Indeed, only a profligate, spoiled young master like him dared to issue such threats in public. What kind of place was the Imperial City? Here, murder was a heavily punished crime. At the side, Wei Hele's face was also filled with fury. He had actually been slapped away by someone? This was too insolent, too detestable. He will definitely not spare this reckless fool. Younger brother disciple Wei? It was at this moment that a young man and woman walked over. When the maiden clearly saw Wei Hele's face, she revealed a surprised expression. Elder sister disciple Li. Wei Hele hurriedly got to his feet. His hands remained lowered at his sides, looking extremely respectful. This young maiden was Li Si-chan. In front of others, Wei Hilo could put on an extremely arrogant attitude, but in front of Li Si-chan, he could only obediently withdraw all his prideful obnoxiousness, because Li Si-chan's talent in alchemy was far above his own. Wu Songlin favored only his talent, but Li Si-chan was truly his most favorite disciple. Even if he really did become Wu Songlin's disciple, he'd still have to treat Li Si-chan with utmost respect. Chapter 100. Chapter 100, Intimidated. The young man that had walked in together with Li Si-chan revealed an angered expression. Who dares to be so bold as to disrespect an alchemist? It's He Jun-chin. Chi Yong-ye's brow immediately frowned. A true disciple, second layer of gushing spring tear. He had not spoken in a low voice, as he was trying to forewarn Ling Han of this formidable newcomer. Wei Hilo, on the other hand, smiled. With an elite in the second layer of gushing spring tear as his support, then no matter how strong Ling Han was, it wasn't possible for him to turn this situation around. He said, "Big brother this brat is too arrogant. He bullied elder brother disciple Feng Yan's younger brother, Feng Luo, first, and because I couldn't simply do nothing, I said a few words of justice. And he reacted by slapping me down to the ground. Oh, then I would really like to see who is so awesome," He Jun-chin said coldly. "Ling Han!" Li Si-chan had finally spotted Ling Han now, and could not help but walk forwards a few steps. She said, "Where are you staying now? I've been looking for you everywhere." Hiss! What was the relationship between these two people? Hearing Li Si-chan's words, everyone could not help but feel curious. Could it be that maybe they? He Jun-chen's expression instantly darkened. He was one of Li Si-chan's admirers, and now his dream girl actually uttered words with such ambiguous meaning, causing him to instantly feel as bad as if he had swallowed a fly. No, my master is the one looking for you." Li Si-chan hurriedly corrected her words, sensing the awkward ambiguousness of what she had said. "Oh, what's your master looking for me for?" Ling Han asked very nonchalantly. "Master would like to invite you to tea." Pooh! Practically everyone choked out of astonishment. Who was Li Si-chan's master? Wu Songlin. And who was Wu Songlin? A black-grade high-level alchemist, the headmaster of the alchemy department, and an ultra-big, extremely important person that could practically cause the whole of Rain Country to tremble with a few stomps of his feet. Such a major character actually wanted to invite Ling Han to tea. How many people were actually able to have the honor of having tea together with Wu Songlin? The clan heads of the 8 great clans, the pavilion master of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, the headmaster of the martial arts department, probably just these few people, right? But this was Ling Han, an extremely minor character that had just enrolled into Huyang Academy. Could it be that he was able to stand on even footing with all these very important people of Rain Country? "I don't have the time," Ling Han said calmly. "Pooh!" Instantly, everyone once again choked, all wearing expressions of extreme disbelief. Wu Songlin's invitation to tea, most likely not even the clan heads of the 8 great clans dared to say they didn't have the time, right? This brat was really too awesome, and he had even rejected the invitation so cleanly. Chi Yong-yi, Bailey Ting-yun, and the others all looked overjoyed. As their hearts beat wildly, they knew for sure that they had made the right gamble. But even they had never thought that Ling Han had just barely entered into the Huyang Academy yet had already formed relations with the headmaster of the alchemy department, a black-grade high-level alchemist. Moreover, it seemed to be an extremely good relationship. If they discovered that even the other black-grade high-level alchemist of Rain Country, the pavilion master of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, had to respectfully address Ling Han as "Young Master Han," one wonders what kind of expression these people would have. "Release me, damn you! You actually dared to step on me! I will definitely not spare you!" Feng Luo was still wailing. His face was still stepped on firmly by Ling Han's foot, so he couldn't hear what the others were saying. However, even if he had heard, based on his knowledge, there was no way he would understand the significance of the name Wu Songlin. Everyone's attitude changed at the same moment. Ling Han was someone that even Wu Songlin wanted to invite to tea, who would dare to oppose such a person? Feng Yan indeed had a very bright future ahead of him, but how could he compare with a black-grade high-level alchemist? Wei Hila was even less of a consideration in their minds. The current him wasn't even Wu Songlin's personal disciple yet. Apologies for our prior offense. Please bear with us, younger brother disciple Ling. We would definitely visit you to make a formal apology on another day. When Hai Xing and his fellows said as they raised their clasped hands in Ling Han's direction in apology. In their hearts, they were already gritting their teeth with hatred towards Wei Hila and Feng Luo. If it was not for the two of them, how could they have offended Ling Han? Ling Han only gave a casual wave of his hand. He had not taken these three young men seriously in the first place. When Hai Xing and his fellows were angered at first, but when they recalled that Ling Han was someone that Wu Songlin wanted to invite to tea, their anger instantly disappeared. If it was Wu Songlin who had treated them this way, would they dare to be angry? Of course not, and that's the end of it. On the other hand, Qi Yi and the others all looked extremely satisfied. You guys were so arrogant just now, and now you're cowering like dogs. They all crossed their arms in front of their chests, and raised their heads high, looking very disdainful. When Hai Xing and his friends did not even dare to say anything. They hurriedly turned around and left, not even staying to participate in the auction. How would they still have the mood to? Rather, they were all thinking about how to gain Ling Han's forgiveness in the future. Wei Hili's expression changed multiple times, as if he were a chameleon. In the end, he clenched his teeth, walked towards to Ling Han, and said, "Young Master Han, I was ignorant. I hope that you will generously forgive my misdemeanor this one time." "Who are you?" Ling Han asked serenely. Wei Hila instantly felt like he wanted to bite someone, thinking, "You didn't lose anything, and I was the one who received a slap from you. And now I'm actively apologizing, so why are you still unwilling to let the matter drop? Younger brother disciple, do you have some kind of misunderstanding with Ling Han?" Li Si Chan's expression immediately darkened as she watched this happen. She was very clear what kind of position Ling Han held in her master's heart. He was someone that her master would practically respect and revere as a grandmaster alchemist. And you idiot actually dared to come into conflict with Ling Han, that was really seeking your own demise. It's nothing much, really. Just that Brother Ling and young Master Luo seemed to have some kind of misunderstanding between them. I wanted to help them mediate a bit, but who would have thought that both of them were a bit too quick-tempered, which led to a bit of a misunderstanding, Wei Hila said, playing down the matter. His cold eyes were fixed on Ling Han, but burning hatred for Ling Han had risen within his heart. However, he had regained his bearings from the earlier shock that he had experienced and did not believe that Wu Songlin would invite Ling Han to tea. Who were you trying to fool? Who was Wu Songlin? And who was Ling Han? Even the two of them knowing each other was practically an impossibility. What more drinking tea together? It must be that Li Si Chan was the one who had been looking for Ling Han, but because she was afraid of letting others know about that, she had pushed all the blame to Wu Songlin. Why? Because who would dare to confirm this kind of matter with Wu Songlin? And that's the answer itself. He was indeed very respectful and reverent towards Li Si Chan, but because he felt as if he had now gotten hold of her weakness, he naturally felt very bold. "Brother Wei, you've spoken too lightly, haven't you?" Jin Wuji said with a cold laugh. "Just now, you had wanted Ling Han to kneel down to lick Feng Luo's shoes." "What?" Li Si Chan's face instantly became as cold as ice, and when she looked at Wei Hila, it was as if she was looking at a dead man. She would definitely have to report this matter to Wu Songlin, and based on Wu Songlin's respect towards Ling Han, it was a huge question whether Wei Hila would even be allowed to remain at the alchemy department, what more to become Wu Songlin's personal disciple. Elder sister disciple Li, you mustn't just listen to their side of the story. Wei Hila had already made up his mind to continue his lies, so naturally he would not be making any concessions. Ling Han, when are you going to raise your foot? Feng Luo shouted gloomily, both enraged and embarrassed. You guys are really having fun talking, but he was still lying on the ground, and there was still a foot stepping on his face. Ling Han gave a humph, and added a bit of strength into his foot, causing Feng Luo to suddenly wail in pain. His face was already twisted to an extreme degree. He looked at the spectators, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I will not be killing him here." When everyone heard these words, they all felt a hair-raising chill. The implication in Ling Han's words was clear to them would still be killing Feng Luo one day. Chapter 101. Chapter 101, Second Star Grass. Hunyou's eyes were staring fixedly at Feng Luo. She had sensed a very strong hatred towards Ling Han from this human, causing her killing intent to rise. She kept staring at Feng Luo's neck, thinking of taking a bite out of that neck and dealing with that human once and for all. Ling Han reached out and carried Hunyou, and said, "He's too dirty." Hunyou was obviously reluctant, shrinking in Ling Han's hold. A powerful killing intent was still brimming in her eyes. "Pa!" Ling Han gave a stomp of his foot, and a sudden, earth-shaking wail was heard from Feng Luo. His whole mouth was filled with blood. He opened his blood and spat out 10+ fragments of teeth. It looked like his entire mouth of teeth had been shattered with this powerful stomp of Ling Han. The agony caused Feng Luo to tear up and snivel. It was a pain that bore into his heart, and went straight into his bones. But because Ling Han had finally raised his foot, he was able to painstakingly get to his feet. As his eyes swept over his surroundings, he felt that all the people here looked detestable to him. Indeed, they all watched as his whole mouthful of teeth had been shattered by a stomp of Ling Han's foot, and did not even help one bit. Damn them! They deserved to die. However, he was well aware that the current him did not have the ability to oppose the people here, so he could only hatefully cast his eyes over all the people here before abruptly turning around to leave. Naturally, the person he hated the most was Ling Han. He would definitely not let the matter end here. Wei Hila was also unable to continue staying here, so he quickly followed in Feng Luo's footsteps and departed. Qi Yongyi and the others all frowned. Ling Han's actions equated creating a blood feud between himself and the Feng brothers. This was not something that could be easily resolved. But actually, the moment Ling Han had stepped on Feng Luo, this feud was already firmly established, and Ling Han was already firmly on the opposing side of the Feng brothers. As long as Ling Han continued to stay at the Imperial City, then no matter how overbearing Feng Yan was, he would still not dare to take action against Ling Han. Ling Han held no fear. In his last life, he had been a powerful warrior of Heaven Tier. Though now he needed to start again from the beginning, did he really need to feel dread towards two such minor characters? He would eventually kill the two of them. "Haha, the auction is about to begin. Let's go in," Qi Yongyi said with a laugh. This time, thanks to Ling Han, they managed to suppress Wen Haixing and his companions, so he was extremely happy. "Let's head in together," Li Xichan suggested. "En?" He Jun-chin, Qi Yongyi, and the others all revealed expressions of disbelief. Was this really Li Xichan? The twin pearls of the Imperial City, both stunning and devastatingly beautiful. That's how Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were known in the Imperial City. Li Xichan was not like Lu Yutong. The latter had the image of an icy beauty, always maintaining a distance from those around her, that none may trespass. Li Xichan, on the other hand, was very gentle, but underneath her lay a core made of ice. Though she was polite and well-mannered to everyone, she similarly exuded an aura that discouraged others from getting closer. And now, she actually invited Ling Han to join her of her own volition. This was an inconceivable scene to Qi Yongyi and the others. They were all wondering if they had misheard her, or if their eyes had blurred and they had mistook someone else for Li Xichan. But He Jun-chen's expression immediately darkened. From the start, he had disliked Ling Han, and now, it seemed as if the girl that he admired had some kind of unknown relations with Ling Han, causing powerful jealousy to rise within his heart. "All right," Ling Han agreed, without thinking too deeply about it. The entire group entered the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. In this imperial city, Qi Yongye's reputation was obviously not as useful as Li Xichan's, for Li Xichan actually had a private room which she led the others to. The room could accommodate 10 people, so it was not too much of a tight fit for them. Junchen started to ask about Ling Han's identity in a roundabout way. Which party did such an awesome person come from? But when he found out that Ling Han actually came from Grey Cloud Town, a town under the jurisdiction of Deyuan City, he was instantly stunned. How could that be? A major, important character like Wu Songlin actually wanted to invite Ling Han to tea? He could not understand it. He really could not understand it. Qi Yongyi and the others, on the other hand, had a slight idea what was going on. Because, back in Deyuan City, there were already 3 black-grade alchemists that gathered around Ling Han. Though Wu Songlin's status was far higher than Zhu Hexian and the rest, it was still easier for them to accept such an inconceivable matter. Meanwhile, Ling Han was indifferent about what the others were thinking. The only thing he was focused on doing now was to see what good things he would be able to see in this auction. After 10,000 years, it appeared as if a lot of pill formulae had been lost in the passage of time. For example, a treasure like the dark moon grass was actually reduced to being used to concoct the purple origin pill. Then, chances were that there would appear spiritual medicines that were extremely valuable, yet used very wastefully. Mere moments later, the auction began. Because the auction today was only the small-scale auction that would be held every month, while there were many participants, not many of them could actually pay large sums of money for the items on auction. As a result, the prices of the items on auction all fell into a reasonable range. Meanwhile, Ling Han was extremely astonished, because some of what he saw as extremely low-grade alchemical pills could actually be sold at exorbitant prices. These people were filthy rich, but very foolish. He was secretly pondering that it was perhaps time for him to concoct some alchemical pills. Though there were still monetary notes of about 100,000+ in his pockets, looking at the generous way the people here were throwing around their money recklessly, a mere 100,000+ silver coins really could not buy much. I don't know how many alchemists are present here today, but the upcoming merchandise is truly a valuable medicinal ingredient. The auctioneer performed with full effort on the stage. He gave a wave of his hand, and a beautiful female attendant walked onto the stage, carrying a tray. There were 3 herbs on the tray, and if one paid close attention, they were actually glittering like stars. Second star grass! Someone immediately called out. Second star grass is actually on auction. This is indeed a valuable treasure for alchemists, but for martial artists, this second star grass does not have much value. The auctioneer cleared his throat and said, That's right. This is indeed the second star grass which can be used to concoct the refreshing pill. I believe that most would know of the usefulness of the refreshing pill. It can refresh an individual's state of mind. For a martial artist, this indeed does not have much value, but for an alchemist, its value is beyond measure. For a martial artist, when their spirit was exhausted, they would not be able to continue moving their origin power and cultivate. Thus, the value of the refreshing pill for a martial artist was only extending the time he could cultivate every day to be a little longer. But who would have so many refreshing pills to squander? Even if he had 10, that only meant that he'd be able to cultivate longer for 10 days. And what use was that? But it was a completely different matter for an alchemist. Controlling flames was something that exhausted one's mental energy to a great degree, but some alchemical pills needed a very, very long time to be concocted, and if the alchemist's mental energy ran out midway and he did not have enough spiritual energy left, then what was to be done? It was in such moments that the refreshing pill would come into play. It would replenish the spiritual and mental energy of the alchemist, and he'd be able to successfully concoct an alchemical pill that he had initially been unable to concoct. Thus, Li Si Chan's eyes immediately lit up. What alchemist dared to say that their spiritual energy was abundant enough to the point that they could concoct every single type of alchemical pill? Ling Han's eyes lit up as well. At the same time, he felt an irrepressible urge to swear. That was second star grass, and it could be used to concoct the second star pill. And what were the effects of the second star grass? To strengthen one's mental energy. One was used to replenish, and the other could be used to strengthen. How could they be the same? If it was merely replenishing, then it would work only one time. But if it was strengthening, then the effects were permanent. Moreover, even martial artists would scramble madly for the second star pill, and the value of the second star grass could not be compared to the value of the concocted second star pill. Ling Han was shaking his head mentally. The field of alchemy had degraded too much in this era. Previously, the dark moon grass was used to concoct the purple origin pill, and now, the second star grass was being wasted to concoct the refreshing pill. He said to Li Si-chan, "Girl, let me have this second star grass." Li Si-chan knew that Ling Han was also an alchemist, so it was not a strange thing that he would want the second star grass too, but she needed it as well. She could not help revealing a troubled expression. She could reject him, but this was a person even her master respected. But if she agreed, then wouldn't that mean that she would lose such a valuable medicinal ingredient? Seeing her expression, Ling Han leaned towards her and said in a low voice, "I can sell you a cultivation technique that will allow you to speed up the recovery of your mental energy." "What?" Li Si-chan forgot their surroundings as she suddenly yelled. Chapter 102. Chapter 102, Major Origin Spirit Replenishing Technique. It was common sense that aside from taking medicine, time was the only way to slowly recover one's spiritual energy. And now, Ling Han actually said that he wanted to sell her a cultivation technique that would boost the recovery of spiritual energy. How could she not lose her bearings from such an extreme shock? "Bastard, what did you do to Si-chan?" He Jun-chin immediately shouted, his whole face filled with thunderous rage. When he saw the expression of utter astonishment on Li Si-chan's face, he assumed that she had been taken advantage of by Ling Han. He had a crush on Li Si-chan, and when he had seen the previous intimate interactions between Ling Han and Li Si-chan, he was already extremely displeased. Now, he naturally could no longer restrain his resentment. "It's none of your business, just sit down somewhere," Ling Han said nonchalantly. "How dare you!" He Jun-chin had already been extremely irritated by Ling Han's presence, and now he stood up instantly in a rage, ready to make a move. "Elder brother disciple what are you doing?" Li Si-chan immediately stretched out an arm to block his advance, her beautiful face filled with displeasure. That was natural. If there really existed such a cultivation technique that could aid in the recovery of spiritual energy, then its value would be absolutely beyond measure, and would also be something that all the alchemists in this world would go crazy about. Are you actually defending him?" He Jun-chen's expression transformed drastically. He had already been suspicious of the ambiguous relationship between Ling Han and Li Si-chan in the first place. Now that Li Si-chan was actually protecting Ling Han, she caused his suspicions to deepen. "You were the unreasonable one in the first place," Li Si-chan said, displeased. "I am unreasonable?" He Jun-chen almost jumped up, thinking, "You adulterous couple are already flirting so openly in public, and actually dare to accuse me of being unreasonable? Idiot, shut up!" When Ling Han saw that the bidding for the second star grass had already begun, he quickly waved a hand at Li Si-chan, and said, "Get me this second star grass, and that cultivation technique will belong to you." He only had over 100,000 silver coins, which was definitely not enough to buy these 3 stalks of second star grass. He naturally could only place his hopes on this rich woman, Li Si-chan. If this wasn't the case, he wouldn't consider selling off that spiritual energy replenishing cultivation technique even if it was only a low-grade spiritual support technique. At least in the vicinity of Rain Country, it was still a priceless treasure. Li Si-chan's attention was immediately turned back to him, and she asked, "You wouldn't be lying to me, right? What do you think?" Ling Han countered. Li Si-chan pondered that while this guy was actually younger than herself, his ability had already been recognized and acknowledged by 2 black-grade high-level alchemists at the same time, so it wasn't likely he would be making baseless boasts. After all, the acknowledgement of these 2 alchemists was definitely worth more than a few dozen 100,000s of silver coins. She nodded and immediately began bidding. As an alchemist, even if she was only in yellow-grade mid-level now, the wealth she possessed was still very shocking. She easily raised her bid to the exorbitant price of over 1,000,000 silver coins, and it still seemed as if it was something very easy for her. Ling Han nodded internally. Looks like this girl's rate of success when concocting pills was not low, and that was why she had been able to accumulate such wealth. An alchemist being in a higher grade did not mean that he would definitely be able to earn money, or earn big money, because this was affected by their success rate. For example, let's say that the medicinal ingredients cost 1,000,000 silver coins, and theoretically, 30 alchemical pills could be concocted from this amount of ingredients. The total worth of these 30 pills would be 9,000,000 coins, so with a 100% successful concoction rate, an alchemist would be able to earn 8,000,000 coins, and that was a profit of 8 times his costs. But if the alchemist's success rate was only 10%, then the 3 alchemical pills that were concocted would be sold for only 90,000 silver coins. Not only would the alchemist not profit, he would have lost 100,000 coins. The higher the grade of the alchemical pill, the lower the rate of successful concoction, so don't think that alchemy was a profession that earned big money. Whether or not it would be profitable would still depend on the alchemist. The amount of money earned would differ with different alchemists. For example, the 3-fire guide that Ling Han had invented in his last life was able to greatly increase the rate of success, and brought a revolution to the field of alchemy. It also earned Ling Han the revered name of Alchemy Emperor. While Li Si-chan was only a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist, if her rate of success was extremely high, she too would be able to earn a lot of money. Of course, the higher the grade of alchemical pill, the more money could be earned with a high success rate. For example, when Ling Han in his last life had concocted some earth-grade alchemical pills, then no matter how much money you offered, you still would not be able to buy any. You had to trade either natural treasures, high-grade cultivation techniques, or martial techniques in exchange for a few earth-grade alchemical pills. While he was in his pensive thought, Li Si-chan had already successfully obtained the 3 stalks of second-star grass, paying the high price of 1,200,000 silver coins. After all, there weren't many alchemists here, and even if there were, they were obviously not as wealthy as Li Si-chan. Ling Han smiled widely. If it had been his last life, it would not be possible to purchase such a priceless item with worthless crap like gold and silver coins. Spending a mere 1,000,000+ silver coins, he managed to get it. This was an extremely great profit. Very quickly, the staff of Spiritual Treasures Pavilion had delivered the 3 stalks of second-star grass over to them. "When you give me that cultivation technique, I'll give you the second-star grass," Li Si-chan said. The corners of Ling Han's lips twitched, and he said, "Do you think I would renege on a promise to a little girl like you? Don't act so old and mature, you're 1 year younger than me," Li Si-chan pointed out. She was actually really scared that Ling Han would act shamelessly, and take advantage of his younger age to trick her out of her money. After all, this was the money that she had earned through her own hard effort. "Fine then, let's return to the academy immediately." Ling Han could barely wait to concoct the second-star pill. The sooner he took the pill, the sooner his spiritual energy would be increased, and he would be able to cultivate for a slightly longer period of time every day. Accumulating this extra bit of time over a long period of time would eventually lead to a very significant increase of his cultivation. "All right." Li Si-chan nodded. She wanted to get her hands on a cultivation technique like this as soon as possible, too. Ling Han carried Hu Niu, and the group of 3 departed. Qi Yongyi and the others snickered in unison, revealing knowing expressions. Only He Jun Chen's expression darkened like water. He had already developed a powerful killing intent for Ling Han. After all, Li Si-chan was not only one of the twin stunning pearls of the Imperial City, she herself was a very impressive alchemist, possessing a future with unlimited possibilities. If he was able to marry such a woman, then whether it was for himself, or for the clan behind him, this would be a colossal gain. This was his woman, and he would mercilessly kill all who threatened his position as her man. Ling Han and Li Si-chan soon returned to the academy. When they arrived at the place Ling Han was staying at, he told Hu Niu to play by herself while he began to impart a spiritual energy replenishing cultivation technique to Li Si-chan. The name of this technique was Major Origin Spirit Replenishing Technique. This was not Ling Han's own invention. Instead, It was an extremely common spiritual support technique in the field of alchemy from his last life. It was very effective for the recovery of spiritual energy for any alchemist below Gushing Spring tier, but after the alchemist has passed into Gushing Spring tier, its effects would begin to decrease. Thus, Ling Han did not have much misgivings or reluctance, and directly taught it to Li Si-chan. Otherwise, the latter would have to perform 3 kowtows and 9 bows, completing the formalities of becoming his disciple, before he would be willing to teach her the real art of alchemy. But for Li Si-chan, this cultivation technique was indescribably valuable and priceless. Her whole body was shivering, because she was really too overwhelmed with excitement. Can I teach this major origin spirit replenishing technique to my master?" she asked very nervously. "All right, then I'll sell it for a rough 10 million. Ling Han nodded without hesitation. "When you sold it to me, the price was only 1,200,000. Though Li Si-chan knew that Wu Songlin could easily afford this sum of money, but as his disciple, she would naturally want to defend her master's interests. "That's because you're a beauty, so I gave you a friendly price. Your master. Sigh, not pleasing to the eye at all, so of course I'd be selling it to him at the original price." Ling Han laughed. Li Si-chan rolled her eyes at him, but because Ling Han was complimenting her beauty in a roundabout way, she was still very happy. Chapter 103. Chapter 103, Sword Heart. Li Si-chan very happily departed, and Ling Han lay on his bed for some rest. It wasn't that he did not want to immediately begin concocting the second star pill, just that he had never imagined that he would actually manage to obtain such a valuable spiritual medicine on his very first day in the Imperial City. How could he have the other supplementary ingredients on hand? As a result, the only option for him now was to wait until the next day to go to the Heavens Medicine Pavilion to buy the complete set of ingredients necessary before he could go on to the next step. Conveniently, he still had to fix up his own courtyard slightly. After all, he would have to stay here for at least a few years, so it was necessary to set up some restrictions in the surrounding area. This would be one of the hidden cards up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Hunyo had lain down beside his legs like a giant cat, and very quickly, the sound of her breathing lengthened and became quieter. But if there was any little bit of disturbance, she would immediately be alerted to wakefulness, bare her sharp teeth, and growl. Ling Han believed that with Liu Yutong's influence in the academy, she would be able to find him very soon. Thus, Ling Han needed not think about anything else, and went to sleep very peacefully. The night passed in silence, and early the next morning, after Ling Han had prepared breakfast and filled the stomachs of both himself and Hunyo, he headed to officially greet his teacher. This was the basic respect that a student should have towards his teacher. He pushed the door open and entered to see that Mo Gao was practicing his sword techniques. However, it was very odd. His right hand held a sword while his left hand was firmly held in a gesture. There wasn't any sort of movement from him at all. Was he practicing his sword techniques, or practicing some kind of chi supporting technique? Hunyo meanwhile revealed a very defensive expression. Her hands were firmly pressed upon the ground, her whole body slightly raised, her small mouth was open, and there was a ferocious light flickering in her eyes. She was ready to make a move at any moment. Ling Han was surprised. The little girl would only show such behavior when she sensed a threat, but the problem was this movement of Mo Gao very threatening? Wait! Ling Han's eyes gradually widened. His divine sense seemed to have detected something inconceivable. And that was the aura exuded from Mo Gao was extremely mysterious. It had a slightly familiar feeling to it, yet he couldn't really grasp what it was exactly. Sword, that's right, it had something to do with his sword. You're here, Mo Gao said. Then accompany me in my sword practice. What sword technique is this? Ling Han asked. It's not any sword technique, but a sword of invincibility, Mo Gao declared incredibly. Meanwhile, Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. He had sensed a very mysterious feeling from the aura that Mo Gao had been giving out just now, and now getting the somewhat even more mysterious way the latter was speaking in, Ling Han felt as if he had grasped something, though it still wasn't too clear. Does a sword of invincibility exist in this world? He asked. A sword in the hands of an invincible swordsman would be a sword of invincibility, Mo Gao said. I am the sword itself. The heart of the sword is brightly lit, able to pierce through every attack, and shatter every attack. Hong! Ling Han felt as if his whole mind had trembled, giving rise to a towering tsunami wave. Sword heart. No wonder he had felt a feeling of mystery, yet this profound feeling was so familiar to him. So Mo Gao was actually cultivating sword heart. He was not the slightest bit suspicious of Mo Gao putting on airs, because the overall level of martial arts in Rain Country was really too low. Simply being able to form sword chi, you'd be named as a ruler. There was no one who had managed to form sword ray at all, so how could sword heart be possible? The heart is the sword that is brightly lit. That was the highest level of comprehension of sword arts. With sword heart, all the attacks of this world would be easily understood and broken down. One only needs to wave his sword once, and all attacks would naturally be broken apart. Who would ever have thought that a swordsman at the mere level of the 9th layer of element gathering tier would be able to somewhat touch the level of sword heart? No wonder that Mo Gao, an obvious genius in his youth, otherwise he wouldn't have managed to enroll into Huyang Academy in the first place, had all of a sudden gone mad. In truth, he hadn't gone mad at all, it was just that he had already began to cultivate sword heart at that time. However, it was immeasurably difficult to grasp sword heart. As a result, his cultivation had stagnated for these 10+ years, because he had concentrated all his efforts on comprehending sword heart. A somber respect came to life in Ling Han. This was sword heart. Even in his last life, there were not many elite swordsmen that had managed to successfully form it. But as long as one succeeded in forming sword heart, not only would he be invincible among all those in the same cultivation level, he'd also be able to disregard the colossal gulf of different cultivation levels to kill a powerful enemy at a higher tier. It was incomparably feared. He clasped his hands together and said, "Please share your wisdom, teacher." Mo Gao was a bit surprised. Aside from himself, everyone else in the academy thought that he was off his rocker. Even he himself, in these 10+ years, would occasionally doubt if he had made a wrong turn in life, and whether he really would be able to create a sword of invincibility. And this young man, without any bit of hesitation, was actually willing to join him in sword practice. What deep trust this unfamiliar young man had towards him! When he thought this, Mo Gao actually felt a little touched. He, a solo swordsman with the sword as his only companion, completely isolated himself from everyone else. In the blink of an eye, 10+ years had already passed. He had spent it on sword practice, and even more sword practice. And now, a young man actually held such admiration and trust for him, causing him to suddenly become excited. This was a good student, he definitely had to teach this student well. Mo Gao was thinking thus in his heart, and began to talk non-stop. The art of the sword is like a person of noble character, magnanimous and devoid of even a single bit of vile character. This was the understanding that he had come to through these 10+ years of extreme focus and hard practice. He didn't even care if Ling Han could understand or not, and simply recited all of whatever he knew and had grasped. Yet Ling Han was becoming more and more astonished. Although his cultivation level had dropped, his comprehension was still the one of that powerful warrior of heaven tier that he had been, so naturally, he could understand all of what Mo Gao was saying. And it was exactly because he could understand everything that he was astonished beyond measure. Mo Gao's understanding of the sword had already completely surpassed his cultivation level. Even if he had yet to reach the level of the heart of the sword is brightly lit, he was just a mere step away from grasping sword heart. In a place with such a low overall level of martial arts, and with himself who was at the mere level of 9th layer of element gathering tier, his fingers actually managed to touch the door that led to sword heart. How could Ling Han not be astonished? When Mo Gao was finished speaking, Ling Han simply stood there without moving at all, silently digesting all that he had heard. For any swordsman, this lecture was invaluable. This was not a sword technique, nor was it a martial arts technique at the high level of heaven or earth grade. It was only a lecture of an individual's understanding of the art of the sword. Yet it was an explanation that was very close to the core of the art, directly touching the base. Of course, even if a swordsman had managed to form sword heart, the level every individual swordsman could grasp would differ, because sword heart was based on the individual swordsman's understanding of the art of the sword. But listening to such a lecture was too great a help for Ling Han, who had, at the moment, only formed 5 flashes of sword chi. It was as if there was a path of gold laid out in front of him, guiding his advance forwards. Hu Niu instantly looked bored. Her hands held onto her ears, and she appeared very sleepy. Hey! Ling Han suddenly leaped up, the sword hanging at his waist leaving its sheath. He quickly turned around on the spot and brandished his sword in a wave. 5 flashes of sword chi danced unhindered. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Cold light flashed and flickered. But moments later, another needle-sharp flash of sword chi was actually formed, and joined the previous 5 flashes of sword chi. The 6th flash of sword chi. This flash of sword chi quickly grew, becoming longer and wider, and finally looked no different from the other 5 flashes of sword chi. Many thanks, teacher. Ling Han raised his clasped hands towards Emo Gao and offered his thanks. This was not as simple as only having formed a flash of sword chi. He would be able to benefit from Emo Gao's lecture throughout his whole life. If he managed to grasp sword heart in this lifetime, then Emo Gao's lecture would at least have helped him save half the time he needed to be able to reach that step. He had never thought this would happen. The only reason why he had come to Huyang Academy was to make Ling Dongxing happy, yet he would actually have such an unexpected gain. He's earned big. Chapter 104. Chapter 104, embarrassingly short of money. Emo Gao was also astonished. In his opinion, any student that would have been shoved to him must have come into the academy through a backdoor. There was not much future in developing such a student, and that was why he would be wasting his time with Emo Gao. Just now, he had spoken for so long and so much, rather than saying that he was teaching Ling Han. It was more appropriate to say that he had all of these words stuffed inside him for too long, so he desperately wanted to share them with someone else. He did not consider at all whether Ling Han could understand what he was saying or not. He had never thought that Ling Han would really have understood his lecture. Moreover, after digesting the information he had blurted out, Ling Han very quickly managed to form a new flash of sword chi. If it was only a single flash of sword chi, he could still accept it. The problem was that Ling Han had already possessed 5 flashes of sword chi in the first place. 5 flashes of sword chi, what kind of concept was that? 3 flashes of sword chi, and you would be able to claim the name of ruler. 5 flashes, and that was a minor achievement. This was definitely a genius, and it was very likely that he had surpassed all those of the same age in Rain Country. But how could such a genius be shoved onto him to be taught? Emo Gao really couldn't understand. However, when his thoughts took a different turn, he became extremely delighted. Because Ling Han was now his student, and the higher the achievements his student managed to attain in the future, the prouder he would become. Teacher, there are some parts one didn't really understand. Ling Han questioned Emo Gao after he had withdrawn his sword. With regards to the level of understanding of martial arts, he was more than qualified to be the Grand Master of Emo Gao. But if it was only looking at the comprehension of the art of the sword, Emo Gao was above him. The reasons were simple. Firstly, Emo Gao had immersed himself in the art of the sword for 10+ years, and secondly, he was indeed a genius swordsman. Whatever you don't understand, just say it, Emo Gao immediately said. It had been more than 10 years. When had he ever been asked questions by a student? Ling Han raised some of his doubts, and Emo Gao immediately gave him a lecture based on his own understanding. Through this process, he also obtained a great enlightenment for himself. One has to know that though Ling Han himself had not spent much time on the art of the sword, his knowledge as a former warrior of Heaven Tier was still there, so the questions he asked were all core questions. Emo Gao continuously made sounds like "ee, yeah," and "oh," his eyes becoming brighter and brighter. His expression was one of both delight and frustration, seemingly unable to contain his present joy. Unknowingly, the time had arrived at noontime. Mo Gao gave a long sigh, and said, "Your talent in the art of the sword is higher than mine. I do not have the face to become your teacher. Let's just do it this way, the both of us will treat each other as friends of the same generation, and have frequent discussions with each other." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "In the art of the sword, Teacher Mo indeed has the qualifications to become my teacher. Even if I surpass Teacher Mo in the art of the sword someday, I will never forget the favor Teacher Mo has done by teaching me today." Mo Gao was deeply moved. He would actually encounter such an exceptionally talented student. It was a pity that he was not qualified enough to take Ling Han as disciple. Their teacher-student relationship too was only formed because of the academy. "Oh," Hu Niu said pitifully, tugging on Ling Han's sleeve. All right, let's go eat." Ling Han bade Mo Gao goodbye and left the academy. He then found a random restaurant, ordered some main dishes of meat and fish, and began feasting together with Hu Niu. If you wanted to eat with this little girl, you really needed to be quick enough. Otherwise, whenever a dish was served, it would definitely be gone within mere moments. One meal actually cost over 1,000 silver coins, causing Ling Han to cry out that he really did not have enough money to spend. This was because the prices in the imperial city were very high, and this little girl really had too big an appetite. He really needed to concoct some alchemical pills to earn money. Otherwise, it'd be a problem just feeding Hu Niu, what more to buy resources for his own cultivation. There was nothing to be done about it. He had just arrived at the imperial city yesterday, so there was 1,000 things for him to do. He would have to start everything all over again. Ling Han held on to Hu Niu's tiny hand, and asked around the people on the streets. This way, he soon found Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. It really did deserve the name of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion of the Imperial City. Merely the flight of 1,000 steps leading to the entrance was impressive enough to provoke gasps of amazement. The steps were as wide as 100 meters, slanting all the way upwards. There was an extremely glamorous, luxurious giant hall to be seen at the high level of 300 meters upwards. Ling Han and Hu Niu climbed the stairs and entered the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Once they entered, they saw a sweet-looking female attendant responsible for sales walking forward to greet them, saying, "Honorable customer, how do you do? I am Xiaoying. May I know what kind of alchemical pills you require?" "I don't need any alchemical pills. I only need some ingredients," Ling Han said with a smile. "May I know what ingredients you require?" Xiaoying asked again. Ling Han recited the list of ingredients he required. Xiaoying had obviously been trained for a very long time. While she memorized the names and amounts of the ingredients, she even informed him of the prices of the individual ingredients. "Honored customer, your bill comes to a total of 320,000 silver coins," Xiaoying said with a slight smile. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion needed to depend on the sale of completed pills to earn money. In case of ingredients, unless they were especially valuable, for example, like the second star grass, their price would only be a bit higher than their cost. Thus, even if this was a huge purchase, the profit made by the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was really not much. As a result, the amount of commission she could earn would naturally not be much either. 320,000. Ling Han sighed. He only had about 100,000+ on hand. This was far from the amount that was necessary. But he wanted to concoct the second star pill as soon as possible, so he said, "Please inform Fu Yuanxing for me. Just tell him that Ling Han is looking for him." "Fu Yuanxing? The pavilion master?" Xiaoying was stunned for a moment, before suddenly realizing. Immediately, she was so shocked that she had even begun to stutter. What kind of remote existence was the pavilion master? Aside from the Rain Emperor, there was no one who possessed a higher status than their pavilion master. Even the clan heads of the 8 great clans were only able to stand on equal footing with the pavilion master. And now, a young man actually said he wanted to see the pavilion master. This was naturally troubling to her. There was no reason for her to inform the pavilion master of this at all. "It's all right. You only need to tell him that I am Ling Han, and I believe Fu Yuanxing should even reward you," Ling Han said with a smile. That was natural. He, the Alchemy Emperor, was here personally. Fu Yuanxing would definitely be overjoyed. How would Xiaoying dare to believe that? No matter how she looked, Ling Han looked to be only a young man of about 17 or 18 years old, so how could he possibly know the pavilion master? Even if the clan heads of the 8 great clans were here, whether or not the pavilion master would agree to meet with them depended on his mood. But in the training that she had received, the most important thing was not to offend any customers. Thus, she apologized and said, "At my rank, I am unable to personally see the pavilion master, so please wait for a moment, while I report this to the branch manager." Ling Han would naturally not cause her unnecessary trouble, so he simply nodded, and sat down somewhere. Hu Niu saw him sit down, and imitated him. She climbed up to Ling Han's lap, and similarly sat very earnestly. After a while, they saw Xiaoying walk behind a man who appeared to be in his 40s, and the pair was heading towards them. She looked to be in a bit of a panic. "Brat, so you're the one who wants to see our pavilion master?" This middle-aged man looked at Ling Han disdainfully. He had heard what Xiaoying had to say. In his opinion, Ling Han must have been embarrassingly short of money, which was why he had deliberately said he knew the pavilion master, thinking of using this way to bargain for a cheaper price. He was really too naive. Ling Han's brow frowned, and he said, "You should speak more politely. If you have no money, then don't pretend to be so capable." The middle-aged man humphed, laughed loudly and said, "If you really do know the pavilion master, then I will eat this whole table." He pointed at a long table at one side. Ling Han put on a smile and said, "I did not think you would have this kind of hobby. If I don't satisfy you, then wouldn't that be too unreasonable of me?" "You're spouting nonsense," the middle-aged man said coldly. Chapter 105. Chapter 105, Conceding Defeat. "Manager Yuan," Xiaoying called out to the middle-aged man in a low voice. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion had its rules. The first rule was, never, ever be impolite to any potential customer. The middle-aged man cast a displeased glance at Xiaoying, waved his hand, and said, "Somebody, chase this poor brat out of here!" Xiaoying did not dare to say anything further. She simply looked sympathetically at Ling Han and Hu Niu. This middle-aged man's name was Yuan Gang. He had previously only been an odd jobs worker here, but unexpectedly, a few months ago, his younger brother advanced to become a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist, causing Yuan Gang's own position to rise, allowing him to obtain the position of a minor manager. Because he had struggled at the lowest level for a long time, now that he was in a high position, Yuan Gang had become extremely arrogant, always thinking of new ways to show off his present superiority. Ling Han was extremely unfortunate he just so happened to be this guy's target. Two sturdy, well-built men walked over and stood behind Ling Han. One of the pair spoke. "Honored customer, please come with us." Ling Han have a sigh. Did he really have to use force? "Ling Han! Ling Han!" It was at this very moment that a sweet voice was heard from behind him. Ling Han turned around to see that the speaker was actually Qijan Tai. Why was the 7th princess of the royal house of the Deyuan king here? When he took a closer look, it seemed that both Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan were here too. In that case, it was only natural that the girl was here too. "Yo, never thought that a poor brat like you would have such a pretty wife." Yuan Gang gave an envious look, then said to Ling Han, "Poor brat, lend me your wife for me to play with for a single night, and I could give you a 20% discount." "Ha ha! Pa!" His face suddenly suffered a slap, his feet stumbled, and he directly fell onto the floor. The one who had slapped him was, of course, Ling Han. "Bastard, you actually dared to hit me!" Yuan Gang got up to his feet in a single movement, his face filled with thunderous rage. "So what? Can't you be hit?" Zhang Weishan walked over with a cold smile. "And who are you?" Yuan Gang did not even think, and immediately raised his finger to point directly at Zhang Weishan's face. What?" he gasped in shock. There was astonishingly a silver badge hanging on this newcomer's breast. Perhaps there would still be some people who may not recognize this, but definitely not him, an experienced senior, who had been working at this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion doing odd jobs for over 10+ years. A black-grade low-level alchemist. "Yes, sir." He hurriedly bent his knees in a bow, an obeisant expression on his face. The only reason he was in the position of minor manager was because of his younger brother, yet his younger brother was only a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist. Compared with this esteemed black-grade low-level alchemist in front of him, the latter was on a complete different level. "Master, this guy was very bad," Qi Zhantai said immediately. "Pooh!" Yuan Gang instantly choked. This beauty was actually the disciple of a black-grade alchemist, and he had actually dared to flirt with her. Wasn't that practically seeking his own demise? He scowled miserably and said, "This young miss, apologies for my smelly mouth, only knowing how to speak nonsense. Deserves to be hit. Deserves to be hit." He began to slap himself repeatedly with a pa 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 sound. "Young friend Ling! Young friend Ling!" Zhu Hexian had also walked over, and together with Zhang Weishan, they raised their clasped hands in Ling Han's direction in greeting. "Grand Master Zhu!" Yuan Gang had only at this moment spotted Zhu Hexian, and was so scared at this point that his whole face had turned pale. Unlike Zhang Weishan, who stayed long-term in the Yuan city to oversee the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch there, Zhu Hexian had previously always been in the Imperial City. How could Yuan Gang not recognize him? Yet these two black-grade alchemists actually performed such a respectful greeting to Ling Han. How could this not scare him witless? "The two of you are here just in time. Help me call over Fu Yuanxing," Ling Han said with a smile. Zhu Hexian took one look at Yuan Gang, then said, "Young friend Ling, we don't have to trouble the pavilion master just to deal with a nasty character like this, right?" He was a black-grade low-level alchemist. He only needed to say the word, and this mere minor manager would be dealt with, no questions asked. "Grandmaster Zhu, please forgive my blindness." Yuan Gang hurriedly began to beg for mercy. But after speaking these words, he realized that the deciding factor in this matter should be Ling Han, so he quickly turned back around, and said, Young Master Ling, please be generous, and have mercy on me just this once." "Hee, you've forgotten, we have a bet going on between us." Ling Han laughed. "Grandmaster Zhu, please help me go and inform Fu Yuanxing, and ask him to come over." "Young Master Ling?" Zhu Hexian stepped forwards, and said in a low voice, "You know Grandmaster Fu?" "Yes, I do." "Help me call him over. I have something to discuss with him." Ling Han nodded. "Then I shall immediately go call him for you," Zhu Hexian said quickly, turned around and left to do what he said. Within moments, Zhu Hexian and Fu Yuanxing were walking quickly over towards them. Naturally, Fu Yuanxing was walking in front, while Zhu Hexian followed behind. "Haha, young Master Ling has arrived. Yet I did not come out to receive you personally, please forgive my slight," Fu Yuanxing said hurriedly. Yuan Gang's face had paled to a whole new level. So it was not just Zhu Hexian that revered Ling Han so much, even Fu Yuanxing treated him with such respect. Who was this brat? He was a little too awesome, wasn't he? Ling Han smiled at Fu Yuanxing, then looked over at Yuan Gang, and said, "This bet should be counted as my win, right?" "Of course, it's your win, young Master Ling." Yuan Gang took advantage of the change of topic and immediately said in a flattering tone. Ling Han nodded and said, "All right, then you can start eating." Yuan Gang found himself suddenly tongue-tied. "What is it? Do you need me to add some seasonings and cook it for you?" "All right, so do you want it braised or steamed?" Ling Han said with a smile. Young Master Ling is really such a joker. Yuan Gang laughed awkwardly. "I may joke around with my friends, but you are not my friend," Ling Han said calmly. "What is going on?" Fu Yuanxing interrupted, his tone already filled with strong displeasure. He and Wu Songlin had just benefited from Ling Han's teachings the day before, which allowed the two of them to see a flicker of hope to break through to become Earth-grade alchemists. For the two of them, Ling Han could even be considered as half their master. And now Ling Han was obviously expressing his dissatisfaction, so he naturally was also extremely unhappy. It was not very appropriate for him to ask Ling Han, and he would not be asking Yuan Gang either, so he directed his gaze at Xiao Ying. Yuan Gang instantly began to signal repeatedly at Xiao Ying with his eyes, hoping that she would be merciful with her words, and speak a few good words on his behalf. However, Xiao Ying pretended she had not seen his desperate look and recounted all that had happened earlier from start to finish. Fu Yuanxing was instantly enraged, and pointing at Yuan Gang's nose, he said, "How dare you! So you are already in the position that you can speak for me? Since it was your own words, then go ahead and eat." Yuan Gang's face twitched uncontrollably. This time, it was the command of the pavilion master of Rain Country's Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Even the Rain Emperor himself would have to give him some face. Looks like there was nothing to be done. Whether he liked it or not, he was going to have to eat. But still, how was he supposed to force himself to eat a table? He found his resolve, and with a paw, ripped off a table leg, put it in his mouth and began to chew. Kacha kacha! He was in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so his teeth and strength were not too weak. It was easy for him to chew the table leg to bits. When the other staff members saw this, they all hid a smile. Yuan Gang was a nasty character that had been acting high and mighty after getting this position. There were quite a few people in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion who did not like the way he did things, but they did not dare oppose him publicly. They were naturally happy to watch the show of him struggling to stuff the table leg down his throat. Ling Han, on the other hand, was not interested in watching the magnificent feat of Yuan Gang eating the whole table. He said to Fu Yuansheng, "You should just fire this kind of person. This young girl is quite able, so just let her take over the vacant position. I shall listen to young Master Ling's arrangements." Fu Yuansheng said very humbly. Xiao Ying instantly looked overjoyed, and when she looked at Ling Han, her eyes were filled with gratitude. Chapter 106. Chapter 106, Doubt. Yuan Gang repeatedly begged for mercy, yet who would really take to heart such a minor character? In the end, he could only leave in defeat. The other members of the staff all wanted to break into applause out of happiness. This Yuan Gang was a vile character who had just gotten a bit of success recently, yet was arrogant without limits. They all felt that he deserved this kind of ending. When Xiao Ying saw Ling Han, Fu Yuansheng, and the others disappear around the corner, she could not help revealing an infatuated expression. A young girl like her naturally did not lack a romantic imagination. However, she knew that there was too big a gulf between Ling Han and herself in terms of status, so she was just fantasizing a bit. Her heart was filled with gratitude, because she had received a personal acknowledgement from Fu Yuansheng her position in this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion would be unshakable. For Ling Han, this was only a very small matter, and when he arrived at Fu Yuansheng's study, he had completely put the earlier incident out of his mind. He did not want to waste any time, and so voiced out his intention to borrow some ingredients from Fu Yuansheng. Fu Yuansheng nodded and waved his hand. Of course, him waving his hand did not mean that he was refusing Ling Han's request, but that the medicinal ingredients would be a gift to Ling Han instead of a loan. What a joke! This was a Grandmaster alchemist. To be able to supply alchemical ingredients for Ling Han was his honor. What need was there for Ling Han to pay them back? Ling Han did not act modest and said, "How about this? I will concoct an alchemical pill here, and you all can observe the way I do it." He had decided to enact a specific alchemist skill. This was far from the level of the Three Fire Guide, but would be indescribably valuable to Fu Yuansheng and the others. Good. But I would have to ask you to wait for a moment, to allow me to call some other people here to observe, if that's all right? Fu Yuansheng asked cautiously. It would be best if there were more alchemists here to observe and benefit from such a great opportunity. They would be able to improve together. Moreover, the more people there were, then the more possible it would be for them to observe clearly that alchemist skill of Ling Han. Afterwards, they'd be able to confirm and double-check with one another, so they would not easily forget any details. Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan immediately looked a little guilty. The gazes they directed at Fu Yuanxing were filled with respect, because they had only thought of themselves just now, and had not even taken others into consideration. He truly deserved the name of Grand Master. He was indeed a person who thought of the bigger picture. Ling Han smiled and said, "You can, but it would not be appropriate for there to be more than 10 people." "I understand." Fu Yuanxing hurriedly excused himself and left. Meanwhile, Ling Han began to converse with Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan. Qi Zhantai stood at one side, unable to join in the conversation, obviously looking extremely bored. She was currently engaged in a staring contest with Hu Niu. She saw how Hu Niu was so cute, and so reached forward to pick her up. Yet, because Hu Niu disliked strangers getting too close to her, she immediately bared her small white teeth, revealing a very defensive expression. "If you don't want to be bitten, I'd advise you to move your hand away," Ling Han said to Qi Zhantai when he saw this happen out of the corner of his eyes. "I am in the second layer of element gathering tier. How could she manage to bite me?" Qi Zhantai did not believe his advice and instead extended her hand to reach out for Hu Niu at a faster pace. Hu Niu was enraged. Suddenly, she gave a strike of her fingernails and a bite, her movements exceptionally quick. "Ah!" Qi Zhantai hurriedly withdrew her hand, yet there had already appeared a bite mark on her fair, delicate hand. The pain almost caused her to tear up. Ling Han picked Hu Niu up to prevent her from taking advantage and pushing on with her attack. He laughed and said, "Even I have been bitten before. You, at the level of the second layer of element gathering tier, are really not that much." He turned back round and said to Hu Niu, "This is a friend, don't bite her again." Hu Niu held on to Ling Han's neck, tilted her head and continued to stare at Qi Zhantai, her stare still ferocious. Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan could not help but ask about Hu Niu's origins. When they found out the whole story, they were truly amazed, and felt that this little girl was indeed extremely fortunate. Even after dropping into a tiger's lair, she had still managed to survive to such an age. While they were talking, Fu Yuanxin had led 7 people in, all of different ages. The oldest of them looked to be in his 70s, and the youngest was at least in his 40s. All of them had at least one silver badge hanging on their chests, and some even had 2. This meant they were all either black-grade low-level or black-grade mid-level alchemists. "This is young Master Han, and we shall observe young Master Han concoct an alchemical pill later," Fu Yuanxing said. Hearing him say this, all 7 of the newcomers looked extremely surprised. Who were they? They were all black-grade alchemists, and in Rain Country, they could be considered very important people, with extremely high social status. If you were talking about concocting alchemical pills, they were naturally the ones who would be doing the teaching. What need was there for them to observe another person concocting pills? If the person they would be observing was either Fu Yuanxing or Wu Songling, that would be fine. As the only 2 black-grade high-level alchemists in Rain Country, these 2 men have naturally won the reverence and respect of all alchemists. But now, Fu Yuanxing actually wanted them to observe a young man concoct an alchemical pill. How could they accept that? Alchemists, belonging to an extremely rare and extremely important profession, caused everyone in this field to be extremely proud, and the higher their grade, the prouder they were. Immediately, there were a few of the alchemists who looked insulted and angered, but because of Fu Yuanxing's status, they did not lose their temper. Among them, one of the alchemists in his 40s could not hold himself back and said, "Pavilion Master, you're joking with us, right? You actually want us to observe a little guy concocting an alchemical pill?" He had something else that he had held himself back from saying. This brat couldn't be your illegitimate son, right? To command so many of us to come here to instruct him? Fu Yuanxing looked furious. In his opinion, being able to observe Ling Han in the process of concocting an alchemical pill was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Under normal circumstances, what alchemist would easily allow others to watch him concoct pills? Moreover, Ling Han had even said that he would be enacting an alchemist's skill for their observation. If it was not for his determination and desperate desire to develop and advance the field of alchemy in Rain Country, then why else would he have called others here to observe? "He Lin, Apologize to young Master Han, he said immediately in a deep voice. What? That alchemist by the name of Helin raised a brow, looking extremely disbelieving. I am a black-grade low-level alchemist. My status is so high and revered, yet you actually want me to apologize to a young boy like this? Pavilion Master, are you intending to use your public office to avenge private wrongs? How dare you! Zhu Hexian shouted instantly. His eyes were wide with rage, and he looked extremely furious. Both Ling Han and Fu Yuanxing were people he respected very much. Ha ha! Helin laughed loudly, with no hint of respect in his expression. He only gave a cold humph and said, Some things are better left unsaid. He was indeed not afraid of Fu Yuanxing, because his father, He Luo Yun, was also a black-grade high-level alchemist. Years ago, He Luo Yun and Fu Yuanxing were already rivals. They would be competing over everything alchemy, martial arts. The two of them even fell in love with the same woman. In the end, He Luo Yun won the maiden's heart. And now, He Luo Yun already had 1 foot in the ranks of Earth-grade alchemists, and very soon would be able to dominate fully over Fu Yuanxing. As a result, he naturally thought that Fu Yuanxing was deliberately beating down on him, unable to win over his old man. He was actually seeking a feeling of superiority from his son. This was really too shameful. Fu Yuanxing was actually trembling with fury. His well-meant intentions actually got such a payback. Get out! Ling Han said coldly to Helin, pointing at the door. Brat, how dare you actually speak to me this way? Helin was stunned for a moment, before becoming enraged. And both Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan had stepped out to stand in front of Ling Han, glaring furiously at Helin. Two dogs that don't know what's good for you. Helin humphed coldly. I was intending to leave, even if you don't drive me out. Actually watching a wet behind there's brat concoct an alchemical pill, pay. Ha ha ha! He spat and then gave 3 loud laughs, leaving with long strides. Chapter 107. Chapter 107, 4-Form Seal. Fu Yuanxing's face flashed with different expressions very quickly. Finally, giving a long sigh, he said, Though this man is a little arrogant, he does indeed have a talent in alchemy that corresponds with his level of arrogance. I had previously thought to gift him with a rare opportunity, yet never imagined that, AI. He raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction in apology and said, Young Master Han, please don't take his actions to heart. Ling Han smiled softly and said, It's fine. This time, because of Fu Yuanxing, he would not pursue the issue. But if Helin dared to act so pompous in front of him again, he would definitely shatter all the teeth in the latter's mouth. Then let's begin. Fu Yuanxing had already brought all the medicinal ingredients Ling Han had requested for, and Ling Han had also taken out the 2nd star grass. All the people here were black-grade alchemists, so how could they not recognize the 2nd star grass? A few of them instantly looked resentful. They were actually called here to observe a young junior concoct the refreshing pill. This was practically an insult to them. Unfortunately, they did not have a father who was also a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, though they were slightly displeased with Fu Yuanxing's actions, they dared not express that displeasure. However, their faces had all turned a bit sour. When Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan saw the behavior of the others, both of them felt the urge to draw out their weapons to drive these people out. They actually dared to doubt young Master Han? At the same time, Zhang Weishan also felt a bit of shame, for he had also doubted Ling Han before. Ling Han did not bother himself with worrying over what the others were thinking. As the Alchemy Emperor, what need was there for him to obtain the respect of other alchemists? He grabbed the alchemy furnace and began to toss various medicinal ingredients into it. Does this brat actually know how to concoct alchemical pills? How can he simply toss in so many different ingredients all at once? That's right. The first step of the concoction process is purification, and different ingredients require different levels of heat to be purified. If they are all thrown in at once, the only result would be that all ingredients would be damaged. Forget it, just take it as wasting a bit of our time. A few of the alchemists present could not hold themselves back from mumbling complaints to each other quietly. It was not that they did not trust Fu Yuanxing, just that Ling Han was really too young. Moreover, in their eyes, his actions were simply too reckless. They were not the only ones feeling doubtful. Even Fu Yuanxing, Zhu Hexian, and Zhang Weishan were extremely surprised, for the purification of the medicinal ingredients was the first step to concocting an alchemical pill. It was also a very crucial step. Could it be that Ling Han would cause a mess up from the very first step? It was really too bad that Li Xichan was not present. She had previously watched the whole process of Ling Han concocting an alchemical pill from start to finish. Purification was only a piece of cake to him. After tossing in 7 different ingredients, Ling Han's hands trembled, and instantly, flames gushed out. His figure began to circle around the furnace, and struck the furnace with his palms repeatedly. Wang, 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 tong, tong, tong. From within the furnace, steam instantly gushed out. A herbal fragrance also began to spread out within the room. What? All of the alchemists in the room widened their eyes in shock at the exact same moment, expressions of absolute disbelief on their faces. They all looked as if they had just seen a ghostly apparition. Master, what's wrong with all of you? Qizhan Tai asked in confusion. She had just barely entered into the field of alchemy, and had only just learnt the basic theoretical knowledge, thus she had no idea what everyone was so flabbergasted about. Gods, 7 different ingredients really can be purified at the same time. Am I dreaming? One of them gasped in shock before Zhang Weishan could manage to answer. All of these 7 ingredients require different temperatures to be purified, and it should have been impossible to purify them all at once. But this brat used a very intriguing technique. It seems like he has split a single furnace into 7 parts, and the temperature in each separate part is different, allowing for the simultaneous purification of these 7 ingredients to be possible. Amazing! They slowly regained their composure, though their faces still could not hide the admiration they were feeling. But this does not appear to have much meaning. One of the alchemists said hesitatingly after a while. After all, he was not capable of accomplishing such a feat, so the tone he used to voice out his evaluation lacked a bit of confidence. Indeed. Even Fu Yuanxing nodded. Being able to purify all 7 ingredients at the same time is indeed an amazing ability, but to purify the ingredients one by one would only expend a bit more time. He pointed out in his own evaluation. This was what would be called a flashy but useless move, for if there was even the slightest bit of a mistake in the process of purifying all 7 ingredients simultaneously, that would mean that all 7 ingredients would have gone to waste. No! Fu Yuanxing suddenly shook his head, his eyes wide. How could this herbal aroma be so strong? When he brought this up, the others all looked as if they had come to a sudden realization, and consequently, looked very astonished. As black-grade alchemists, the number of times they had purified medicinal ingredients in preparation for the concoction process was uncountable. They were especially familiar with those medicinal ingredients that were frequently used in alchemy. But when they smelled this herbal aroma that was currently spreading out in the room, it was obviously very different from the aroma that was produced when they had purified ingredients in the past. The stronger the herbal aroma was, the purer the essence of the medicinal ingredients produced from the purification it indicated. Also, when the alchemist advanced to the actual concoction process, the success rate of concocting the alchemical pill would be much higher as well. It was a very simple logic. The fewer impurities there were, the less interference there would be with the actual concoction process. But the problem was that as far as these black-grade alchemists were concerned, the purification process was already improved to its limits. There was no room for even the slightest bit of improvement anymore, yet why was it that the medicinal essence that Ling Han had obtained from his purification was so much purer than their own? Could it be that this was why all 7 ingredients had to be purified at the same time? That is the only possibility. That's right, I've heard a senior of mine tell me before that in ancient times, the really capable alchemists were able to purify various medicinal ingredients all at the same time, taking advantage of the mutual effects of the different ingredients to make it possible for the medicinal essence derived from the purification process to be even purer. Could that actually be true? Hiss. Now, everyone could no longer remain calm. Whether the purification process took a longer or shorter time was not something that anyone would really bother about. After all, it was just a bit more or a bit less time. But if it was possible to actually increase the purity of the medicinal ingredients through the purification process, that would be an astonishing feat, and an immeasurably valuable contribution to the field of alchemy. All of them could not help feeling remorse secretly. Because they had all thought that there was not much significance to this step, they had missed a lot of Ling Han's moves and techniques. Thankfully, there were still a lot of ingredients left over, so Ling Han would obviously be repeating the purification process. All 9 of them opened their eyes wide, not daring to miss any single movement of Ling Han anymore. Qi Zhantai was very bored, but there were too many important people here, so she did not even dare to breathe too loudly. Ling Han was very focused. After purifying all of the ingredients, he began the concoction process of the second star pill. The technique he had used was called the four-form seal. It was very effective in controlling the heat of the flames. In his last life, this control technique was also extremely impressive, and found a very widespread use in the field of alchemy at the time. Because he himself had been an alchemist in his last life, Ling Han could not bear watching the field of alchemy degrade to such an extent. Thus, he did not mind imparting relevant knowledge of alchemy at appropriate times to improve the overall level of alchemy in this age. While he continued to concoct the alchemical pill, he also spoke about the key details and features of the four-form seal. All of the alchemists present, including Fu Yuanxing himself, behaved like they were absolute newbies to the art, listening attentively to his lecture with their faces filled with utter reverence. If this scene had been witnessed by others, they would definitely go crazy. It could be argued that all of the most capable alchemists of Rain Country were gathered here, yet they were all very seriously observing a young man concocting an alchemical pill. There was indeed no age limit to learning. Whoever's capable would be the teacher. When Ling Han had finished the process of concocting the second star pill, all of the 9 alchemists were deeply engrossed in comprehending and figuring out the workings of the four-form seal. They were all sitting cross-legged on the floor. Occasionally, it would appear that they were in pensive thought, and sometimes one of them would strike at the air with a palm. They were all trying to digest as much of Ling Han's lecture as possible. "Let's go and eat some meat." Ling Han smiled faintly, and picked Hunyo up. He looked very pleased, because he had managed to concoct 7 second star pills this time, and this would allow his divine sense to improve a considerable amount. Hunyo was instantly happy. Her favorite activity was eating. "I'm going too," Qi Zhantai said quickly. She was really too bored. Chapter 108. Chapter 108, Third Imperial Prince. Ling Han, carrying Hunyo in his arms, stepped out of the room with Qi Zhantai accompanying them. However, Fu Yuanxing was still a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier after all. At the very moment the group of 3 stepped out the door, he immediately came back to reality, and with a quick leap exited as well and said, "Young Master Han, are you leaving?" "And my role's over, so of course I'm leaving." Ling Han waved around the pill bottle that contained the 7 second star pills, looking very pleased. "Please allow me to see you off, young Master Han," Fu Yuanxing said in a very sincere tone. He was already completely convinced by Ling Han's incredible skill in alchemy. Ling Han smiled and nodded. If Fu Yuanxing wanted to see him off, that was fine with him. They walked down the stairs, and right when they reached the beginning of the stairs, a servant boy approached and said, "Pavilion Master, the 3rd Imperial Prince expressed his wish to meet with you." "Oh?" Fu Yuanxing stared blankly for a moment, then said, "I was just about to go down, so don't concern yourself with this anymore." "Understood." The servant boy nodded quickly. He had just spotted Ling Han and Qi Zhantai, which caused him to be lost for words, because they actually had Fu Yuanxing leading them downstairs, which was an extreme shock to him. That was Fu Yuanxing, one of the few most powerful and most respected people of Rain Country. The 3 of them soon arrived at the ground floor and saw there was a young man and woman standing there. The 2 of them were standing upright, showing absolutely no sign of impatience. The man and the woman both seemed to be about 25 or 26 years old. The man was quite tall and had thick black locks. His eyes were bright and expressive, and held a penetrating gaze as if he could look into the secrets hidden in the deepest parts of the heart of anyone his gaze fell upon. The woman had a very shapely, tempting figure, able to cause any normal man's mouth to start watering. Her face was very beautiful and her skin was as fair as white jade. Her hair was actually an unusual crimson shade of fire, which granted her a very unique charm. The man was naturally the third imperial prince, Chi Fengyun, but who was this woman? Ling Han was slightly surprised, because this woman was astonishingly in Gushing Spring Tier. In Rain Country, this kind of a small place, a martial artist that had managed to reach Gushing Spring Tier before reaching 30 years old had indeed made an astonishing accomplishment. She definitely could be categorized as a genius. Pavilion Master! The third imperial prince performed the proper formalities of greeting an elder upon seeing Fu Yuanxing. It was true that he was an imperial prince, but even if he had inherited the throne and was crowned the emperor someday, he would still have to treat Fu Yuanxing with utmost politeness and courtesy. Zhan Tai hereby greets third elder imperial brother. Zhan Tai bowed slightly to greet the third imperial prince. And wait here for a moment. Just let me see off this very honored guest first, Fu Yuanxing said, nodding at the third imperial prince. Very honored guest? The third imperial prince could not help casting his gaze at Ling Han, because there were only 3 people standing behind Fu Yuanxing. Zhan Tai belonged to the royal house of the De Yuan king, so naturally it was not possible that she would be worth such prioritized treatment from Fu Yuanxing, and Hu Niu was too small. This young man, who was he that he was addressed by Fu Yuanxing as very honored guest and make Fu Yuanxing actually personally see him off? That was strange. He had obviously gotten hold of all the relevant, important intel of the imperial city, so how was it possible that such an awesome character would suddenly appear out of nowhere? Please go ahead, Pavilion Master, he said quickly. As Fu Yuanxing escorted Ling Han out the door, he kept repeatedly inviting him to frequently come over and visit him at the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion before finally turning back round and leaving. He seemed to be slightly impatient, was very much in a rush to study the 4-form seal closely. Ling Han walked together with Zhan Tai, while Hu Niu waved her little hands around excitedly, and kept saying, "Meet! Meet! Meet! That brother ahead!" The third imperial prince had caught up with them. Ling Han paused and looked over at the third imperial prince, and said, "Yes?" Wasn't the third imperial prince looking for Fu Yuanxing? Why had he chased after them? The answer was very simple. There has suddenly appeared a person that even Fu Yuanxing would respectfully escort in the imperial city as the third imperial prince. He would of course want to get to know this kind of person at the first opportunity. One had to understand that the Rain Emperor had 17 sons in total. Out of these 17 sons, there were at least 5 that were qualified to compete for the throne. The third imperial prince would naturally befriend capable people with utmost patience in order to accumulate a power base for the day when he would be joining in the competition for the throne. I am Chi Fengyun. If I may ask, could you tell me your respected name, brother? The third imperial prince behaved in an extraordinarily polite manner. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "My name is Ling Han. Brother Ling, I still have some matters to deal with, so it is really not convenient for me to talk too long. I hope that Brother Ling will accept this item as a gift from me. I believe that, in this imperial city, a lot of people would give you a bit of face because of this item." The third imperial prince handed over a violet-shaped badge. "Thank you." Ling Han did not make any pretenses of modesty, and accepted the badge from the third imperial prince. "Brother Ling, when I am done dealing with these matters, I will definitely seek you out for a chat," the third imperial prince said, raising his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction before once again leaving in a rush with that beauty behind him. Ling Han smiled as he weighed the badge in his hand, and placed it into his pocket. "Ling Han, this is a token of the third imperial prince. According to the rumors, the holder of this badge can eat at any restaurant of the imperial city and not pay a single cent. Everything will be paid for by the third imperial prince, Qi Zhangtai said enviously. Ling Han was stunned for a short moment, before suddenly breaking out into loud laughter. Qi Zhangtai was curious, so naturally asked him why he had laughed. I think that the third imperial prince will definitely regret this, Ling Han said. Why? Because there's a real glutton right here, Ling Han said as he rubbed Hu Niu's head. Qi Zhangtai was still baffled. Hu Niu was just a little girl. Even if she ate from morning to night, how much could she eat? There really are good people in this world, Ling Han said ruefully. The three of them left to have a meal at a restaurant. When she saw Hu Niu's terrifying appetite, Qi Zhangtai finally began to worry about that clansman of hers. There was a real chance that Qi Fengyun would be driven to poverty at the rate that Hu Niu ate. Huyan Academy, Feng Luo's room. Bastard! 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 Wei Hila was pacing around in the room like a maniac, his eyes bloodshot, looking very surly. He finally stopped pacing, and said to Feng Luo, Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Headmaster Wu actually expelled me from the alchemy department. Feng Luo's mouth twitched a few times. This was not the first time that Wei Hila had complained and grumbled to him. He counted internally this should be the 37th, or was it the 38th time? Previously, he would still offer a bit of response and comfort Wei Hila a bit, but now he was completely not in the mood for it. Having lost Wu Songlin's regard, a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist naturally would not be someone looked upon too seriously by him. It's all because of that bastard, that damn brat. Wei Hili's eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. He had been so glorious, able to boast and basking in the spotlight as a genius of alchemy. Even those from the royal or noble families had to treat him politely and with courtesy. But now, it was as if he had dropped down from this extremely high position all the way to the bottom of the pit. His future was bleak and dark. A person who had been chased out by Wu Songlin, what alchemist would still dare to take him in as a disciple? Moreover, alchemy skill depended very much on imparted knowledge. If it was simply dependent on self-learning, what could he even manage to accomplish? Which meant that he was completely done for. Feng Luo saw all this happen, and could not hold back a cold smile from turning up the corners of his lips before saying, Young Master Wei, I have a suggestion that would really cause some serious trouble for that brat. He had lost a considerable number of teeth, so he was forced to speak with a lisp now. One had to cautiously decipher his words before being able to understand what he was trying to say. Oh, what suggestion would that be? Wei Hila immediately turned to look at him. The current him had lost practically everything, so he had become absolutely crazy. As long as he could get his revenge on Ling Han, he was willing to do whatever insane thing it was. Here, it's this. Feng Luo took out a badge carved in the shape of a violet. What's this? Wei Hila said blankly. This is a token of the third imperial prince, Feng Luo said with a very devious smirk. This is something that the third imperial prince gifted to my brother. Tell me, if I said I lost this badge, yet this badge was discovered in Ling Han's place, how would the academy deal with him? And how would the third imperial prince react? Wei Hili's eyes lit up in understanding. Frame Ling Han. Chapter 109. Chapter 109 Framed. Ha ha ha, theft is an evil, shameless act in the first place. What more when it actually involves the third imperial prince? Wei Hila could not hold himself back from laughing. At that time, even if the academy had no intention of pursuing the matter further, due to the involvement of the imperial family, even Wu Songlin's reputation would be of no use. Anything related to the imperial family was never small, and Ling Han actually dared to steal an item belonging to the third imperial prince. That was a definite pathway to death. However, there should still be a reason, right? Otherwise, what would a thief steal this thing for? Wei Hila asked, his laughter very quickly stopping. Feng Luo snickered and said, This is a token of the third imperial prince that he has only gifted to a rare few people. The holder of this token would be considered as a dear friend of the third imperial prince. It is not only a symbol of status and identity, It also means that all charges the holder incurred at any restaurant or in the Imperial City would all be placed on the third Imperial Prince's tab. Yeah? Wei Hila looked extremely envious. Although he was a genius of alchemy, he had not managed to obtain the third Imperial Prince's favor, and wasn't gifted with such a priceless token. Now actually seeing a profligate, spoiled young master holding onto one, how could he not be envious? Feng Luo smiled very proudly. This was given to him by Feng Yan, who had feared that his little brother would get into trouble in the Imperial City. If Feng Luo possessed a token of the third Imperial Prince, then no matter who it was, they would have to give the third Imperial Prince some face. He patted Wei Hili's shoulder and said, "Young Master Wei, the task of framing Ling Han would be your job." "Me?" Wei Hila looked troubled at this. He only knew how to concoct alchemical pills, play around and show off, but framing someone was something he had never done before. Moreover, in the past, there were too many people who wanted to curry his favor, so no matter what job he wanted done, he only needed to say it, and there would be someone willing to do that job for him. When had he ever needed to personally do anything? "What is it? Are you not willing?" Feng Luo smiled coldly. He pretended to put away the token. "Then just forget about it. I just wanted to help you vent your anger in the first place, but since you're unwilling to do it, then I will not force you either." "Wait!" Wei Hila hurriedly called out, gritted his teeth, and said, "I'll do it." He was extremely embittered in his heart. He had offended Ling Han, but wasn't it all because he had stood up for Feng Luo? But now this guy actually said he wanted to help him vent his anger, and then he was really turning his back on him, absolutely heartless. But after he had been abandoned by Wu Songlin, he was no longer the young Master Wei of old, but only a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist. What right did he have to go against Feng Luo? Feng Luo had a genius of martial arts standing behind him that could vaguely be close to the level of absolute geniuses like the third Imperial Prince and Qin Yi. Because of his brother, Feng Luo's own future prospects would be immeasurable. How was a down-and-out alchemist like him supposed to compare with that? Due to his current dire circumstances, Wei Hila could only bow his head in acquiescence. If he dared to refuse Feng Luo now, that would mean cutting off his only chance for a bright future. If he followed after Feng Luo, he could possibly leave Rain Country in the future, and thus get out of Wu Songlin's shadow. He accepted the violet-shaped badge, and silently walked to Feng Luo's side. His hands were lowered at his sides, obviously placing his position at a lower level than the latter. "Ha ha!" Feng Luo laughed loudly, his face filled with pride. Even his brother had never thought that he would be able to take a slightly talented alchemist into his camp, had he? Let's see who dared to still say that he was a spoiled young master. Why don't you try taking in a yellow-grade alchemist to show your own ability? Wei Hila lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred and regret. But things have already advanced to this step. There was no way he would be able to return things to how they were before. After enjoying a meal with Ling Han, Qi Zhan Tai naturally returned to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, while Ling Han brought Hu Niu for another walk around the shops and bought some materials to set up the restrictions around his courtyard. He then returned to the academy. He was now not in much of a rush to take the second star pill. His priority now was to set up certain restrictions in the surrounding area of his courtyard. This was an early warning system. If anyone intruded into the courtyard, they would definitely disturb the restrictions in place, which would then release an alarm that only he could sense. Even if he was not in the room, there would still be clues left behind that would tell him that an intruder had broken into his courtyard. There was nothing to be done about it. He had very limited materials on hand, so he could only set up such simple restrictions. If it was in his last life, possibly not even powerful warriors of Heaven Tier would dare to barge through the restrictions he could set up. "I'll just have to make use of whatever is available to me. I don't have any enemies now anyways," he murmured. If Liu Yutong, Qi Yongyi, and the others had heard his words, they would definitely jump out in objection. No enemies? He really dared to say that. Hu Bo was one, Feng Yan was another, He Junqin could also be considered as one, and there was also Nangong Ji. All these people were not easily trifled with, especially Hu Bo and Feng Yen. Hu Bo was a young master of the main line of the Hu clan, and Feng Yen was a genius of martial arts that had the potential to become a ruler. If these people were still not considered enemies, then who would Ling Han actually consider enemies? Unfortunately, they did not know that while Ling Han's current cultivation level was very weak, there was still the pride of a powerful warrior of heaven tier in his bones. How could he actually take these small rascals seriously? Furthermore, in his last life, he had the same kind of attitude, possessing a deep-set pride within him. He would never bow his head to anyone. The restriction was extremely simple, so Ling Han did not expend too much time on setting it up. After that, he swallowed a second star pill, and began to strengthen his divine sense. From what Ling Han knew, there was no cultivation technique in this world that could strengthen divine sense. Only when the cultivation level rises would a martial artist's divine sense advance to the next level. This was a very passive process. For example, when he was still in heaven tier in his last life, his soul only needed to tremble slightly, and he could even directly erase the soul of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. But he had always suspected that since divine sense could be recovered through cultivation techniques and strengthened with the use of alchemical pills or divine medicine, then it should also be possible to cultivate divine sense through cultivation techniques. The only thing was that this kind of cultivation technique was not discovered yet. This was not impossible. After all, if it was not for the fact that he had come from 10,000 years in the past, how would he have known that there were so many pill formulae that had been lost in the passage of time now? Obviously, there is a lot of good stuff that has been lost on the pages of history. Since it was like this in his current lifetime, then how could his last life be an exception to this theory? A very real example was seen from the very last period of his last life, when he had visited various ancient historical sites from which he had obtained a few ancient pill formulae, which could all be considered to belong to the category of lost with time. Thus, perhaps many, many years ago there may have been a cultivation technique that was meant to refine one's divine sense. As he pondered, he was still absorbing the medicinal effects of the second star pill. He suddenly felt very comfortable, for the soul was responsible for all the feelings and sensations of the body. Now that his divine sense was strengthened, he would of course feel an indescribable invigoration. One after another, very soon, he had taken all 7 second star pills. My soul is almost twice as strong now. Ling Han's eyes snapped open. His eyes had become even deeper than before, as if they were twin bottomless pits, causing anyone who looked into his eyes unable to help but fall deeply into them. He smiled. This is a benefit of strengthening my divine sense. Using my divine sense to dominate over my opponent could be considered as my unique move. If my opponent has no defense against this kind of attack, then there is a high chance that I could kill him in an instant. The current strength of my soul should be equivalent to the cultivation level of Gushing Spring tier. His smile grew wider. This means that I would be able to absorb spiritual chi at the rate of a martial artist of Gushing Spring tier for my cultivation, and together with my immortal grade spirit base, the rate of advance of my cultivation level would probably shock even me. I have to quickly reach Gushing Spring tier. Only when I have reached Gushing Spring tier will I be able to practice black grade cultivation techniques. That is the real beginning to the path of martial arts. Now, I am filled with advanced, high-level knowledge, yet have no ability to make use of what I have. This kind of feeling is really horrible. A rat has sneaked in. Chapter 110. Chapter 110, Dropping In. Ling Han really had not thought that this would happen. He had just barely set up the restriction around his courtyard, and he already had a night visitor coming in for a visit. One has to understand that the place he was occupying now could actually be considered a haunted house, a place no one would be living in. If one argued that there so happened to be a burglar who had no understanding of the inner workings of the academy, and somehow stumbled onto this place to commit theft, then the possibility of this happening was really too low. Who could this thief be? Russell! Hu Niu suddenly stood up. She had the alert senses of a wild beast. Her nose might be even more powerful than a dog's, and she may have already caught the scent of the thief. Sure! Ling Han gestured her to stay quiet. He had no desire to scare off the thief. He wanted to know why the latter had come first. Hunyo was firmly ensconced in his hold, and she immediately became quiet. However, her eyes still brimmed with a baleful look. In her beast-like way of looking at the world, this was her territory, and anyone who dared to trespass, whoever it was, should be bitten to death. A dark figure made their way inside, yet did not move around everywhere. They only walked around the living room once before fumbling about a table a few times. After a while, the intruder turned around and left quietly. A sliver of a smile crossed the corners of Ling Han's lips. At the instant the intruder had left, Ling Han had taken advantage of the moonlight to clearly see the face of the intruder. Wei He-le. Ling Han walked into the living room, lit a candle, and approached the table. There was a wooden box on the table, and inside lay a few cheap little trinkets. When he opened the box, he saw that there was something new within. A badge carved in the shape of a violet. This is? Ling Han could not hold back a strange smile as he took out another violet-shaped badge from within his pocket. This had been gifted to him by the third Imperial Prince. Now he had two such badges. Why had Wei He-le secretly stuffed a violet badge into his hands? Oh! Instantly he understood what was going on here. This was an attempt to set him up. There would definitely be someone who would be reporting having lost the item, and Wei He-le would lead people to his place. Naturally, they would find the lost item here, and by that time, there was no way he would be able to escape being accused of theft. Moreover, the stolen item was even a token of the third Imperial Prince. No one would dare to suppress this issue, and by that time, the lightest punishment he would get would be expulsion from the academy. But it was another story whether the third Imperial Prince would send his own people to deal with him or not. The unfortunate thing was that Wei He-le would never have imagined that he would have coincidentally encountered the third Imperial Prince today. He had even been presented with a violet badge from the latter. However, even if he had not met the third Imperial Prince today, since he had discovered the existence of this scheme, there was no way that he could still be successfully set up. Since you want to play, then I'll play with you a bit, Ling Han smiled calmly, and replaced the lid of the box, having no intention at all to remove that badge from within. A cold gleam flashed through his eyes. Since there was someone who wanted to die so desperately, then he would just have to let him die. He returned to the inner chambers and began cultivation. After his divine sense had been strengthened, the efficiency of his cultivation had risen to a whole new level. As massive amounts of spiritual qi gushed into him, it was all absorbed by his 5 elements mixed chaos lotus, and with the strict control granted to him by his powerful divine sense, this spiritual qi was swiftly converted into origin power to strengthen his origin nuclei. Originally, I would have needed around a month to rise to the next layer, but with how things are now, probably half a month would be enough. Ling Han smiled. After his divine sense was completely exhausted, he began to cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll in order to advance from body of dead tree to body of rock cliff. When he has completely grasped body of rock cliff, he'd be able to parry sharp weaponry with his bare hands. The sturdiness of his physical body would become even more terrifying than that of some races with exceptionally powerful natural defense. When he had finished cultivation, there had already appeared a sliver of white in the east. It was only now that he lay down to rest. Meditation could substitute for a part of the sleep he needed. Thus, he only needed to sleep for 1 or 2 hours, and it would be enough for him to be energetic for the rest of the day. When dawn came the next day, he went over to Mo Gao's courtyard to discuss the art of the sword with him again. One of them was an expert in the art of the sword, while the other had an exceptionally high level of comprehension, and so naturally they would be able to use each other as reference, and thus improve themselves. They had only experienced 2 discussions with each other, yet the benefits both had received were quite deep. Pun, pun, pun. Just when the 2 of them were embroiled in a fierce discussion, they heard someone banging on the door which rudely interrupted their conversation. Mo Gao suddenly looked extremely displeased. His fondness for the art of the sword had almost reached the level of insanity. Once he was embroiled in a discussion about sword techniques. Even if it was the gods themselves here for a visit, he would ignore them. He walked over to the entrance, opened the door, and saw that there were over 10 people standing at his doorway. Is Ling Han here? A young man dressed in green-colored long robes took one step forward, his chin proudly raised, looking extremely arrogant in his demeanor. However, he did have the right to be arrogant, for he was astonishingly in Gushing Spring Tier, a much more powerful martial artist than even Mo Gao. Who are you people, and what are you looking for my student for? Mo Gao questioned instead of stepping out of their way and allowing them entry. Teacher Mo, we are members of the discipline committee. Another young man dressed in black walked forwards, though his tone was much more even. Of course, this had something to do with his cultivation level, because he was similarly in element gathering tier, so he did not have much of an advantage over Mo Gao in terms of cultivation level. Don't speak so much nonsense, tell Ling Han to come out quickly! The young man in green robes shouted impatiently, with no hint of caring about Mo Gao. Mo Gao stared blankly for a moment, and then said, What offense has my student committed that requires the discipline committee to take action? The discipline committee, as the name suggested, was an organization that was in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations of the academy. However, the majority of the members of this committee were students, and it could also be considered as a type of part-time job, for the members could earn academic points. Moreover, the members also possessed a considerable amount of power in the academy, so quite a lot of students desperately thought up ways to squeeze themselves into the committee. We suspect that he is involved with the crime of theft, so there is a need for us to search him and his room. Teacher Mo, you aren't thinking of covering for a criminal, are you? The green-clad young man said coldly, showing no respect to Mo Gao at all. Nonsense! Mo Gao was instantly enraged. In his heart, the sword was the most sacred existence in this world, and Ling Han had such a high talent in the art of the sword. The sword would reflect the swordsman's heart. How could such a person be a thief? Get lost! He raised his hand and pointed at them furiously, almost about to draw his sword in ire. Mo Gao, even if you're a teacher of the academy, you still have no right to cover for a criminal. The green-clad young man said, his eyes passing over Mo Gao to look into the courtyard. Get out of my way, or else I will apprehend you on the basis of obstructing law enforcement. Mo Gao was so angry his whole body was shaking. He was a teacher of the academy, yet he was actually now berated and insulted by a mere student. His right hand was already lying on the hilt of his sword, a cold light shining from his eyes, ready to make his move. Teacher Mo! Ling Han walked over to them, smiled softly at Mo Gao, and said, Since they're here to look for me, then just let me deal with this matter. Mo Gao hesitated for a moment, but still lowered his right hand from the hilt of his sword. He would of course not simply watch as his own student was bullied by others, but he too wanted to know what was really going on here. Ling Han's eyes swept over the entourage, and a smile of realization played about his lips. In this group of over 10 people, he had recognized 2 of them to be Feng Luo and Wei Hele. He opened his mouth to say, These 2 should not be members of the discipline committee, right? They are indeed not, for they are the ones who reported the loss. The green-clad young man said, his eyes fixed in a stare at Ling Han. Let me advise you not to have any delusions. In front of me, there is no one who can conceal their crime. Chapter 111. Chapter 111, Apprehend him. And who are you? Ling Han cast his eyes at the green-clad young man, his gaze becoming severe. How dare you speak to me this way? You are indeed a wicked character, the green-clad young man said coldly. His eyes were sharp as swords, staring at Ling Han intensely, and a terrifying aura was circulating around his body. He was an elite of Gushing Spring Tier, and now he was using his aura. This was a kind of domination on the spiritual level. Ling Han acted as if he felt nothing. He had just taken 7 second star pills yesterday, and had greatly increased the strength of his divine sense. Anyone who intended to use his aura to dominate over him would have to be at least in spiritual ocean tier. The green-clad young man could not help feeling surprised. He had already circulated his aura, but why was there no reaction from Ling Han at all? This isn't Shui Ming, elder brother disciple. He is the team leader of Team 7 of the Discipline Committee. A young man dressed in black said, introducing the identity of the green-clad young man. Another thing, he is also one of elder brother's most faithful followers. Feng Luo added internally. Since it was such a good opportunity, he would of course make the most out of all resources available to him, and deal with Ling Han once and for all. The proof was already prepared well in advance, and there was still a lackey of his elder brother playing the part of executioner. How would Ling Han be able to escape from this calamity? I'm very busy, and I don't have the time to waste with you. Take me to your place, I want to search it. And Shui Ming said. Ling Han placed his hands behind his back and said, What right do you have to do such a thing? Are you trying to hinder the work of the Discipline Committee? And Shui Ming said darkly. He was here on Feng Luo's request, so of course he would also take Ling Han to be his enemy. There was no need for him to be polite. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Don't tell me that you people of the Discipline Committee just need to have a small suspicion, and you can simply rummage and search whoever's living quarters? If that's so, it seems like I have lost a bar of soap, and I suspect it was stolen by Wu Songlin, so I'll have to trouble you to search his place for it. Pooh! All of them choked in shock. Who was Wu Songlin? Headmaster of the Alchemy Department, and a black-grade high-level alchemist. With regards to status, he was slightly higher than even the headmaster of the martial arts department, Lian Guangzhu. If they actually dared to search through his quarters, wasn't that practically hoping to die early? Ling Han really dared to say that. He even dared to make a joke about Wu Songlin. Did he not treasure his life at all? And Shui Ming's face twitched madly, feeling that this Ling Han was really a maniac. If the mocking words Ling Han had spoken about Wu Songlin had actually spread out, he would definitely be beaten to death. How could he joke so casually about a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier? Not to mention that Wu Songlin had another status in the form of the prestigious position of a black-grade high-level alchemist. You are trying to seek your own death. He spoke coldly. Since Ling Han was such an arrogant fool, there was no need for him to have any more reservations. He said, You actually dare to insult Master Wu, apprehend him. Oh, let me see, who dares make a move? Ling Han looked at the others contemptuously, smiling slightly, and said, You people must consider carefully, and not be made use of by others. Otherwise, if you dare make a move against me, I will not be merciful at all. The others hesitated at this. Actually, aside from Shui Ming, the others did not have much of a relationship with Feng Yan. Furthermore, when they saw the absence of fear in Ling Han's expression, it seemed as if he had some powerful background. It'd be best if they distanced themselves from this matter, for if they got involved in a fight between two big bosses, minor characters like them would be easily killed. In that moment, no one dared to take another step forward. How dare you! You not only dare to shoot your mouth off, you even dare to threaten members of the Discipline Committee. You are really out of control. And Shui Ming said darkly, and pointed at Ling Han. Zhonglin, apprehend him. Yes, yes. A young man reluctantly stepped out. He naturally knew that Shui Ming was a lackey of Feng Yan, and now this matter involved Feng Luo. Then it was more than obvious that this was a clash between Feng Luo and Ling Han, or it could be considered as a clash between Feng Yan and the person standing behind Ling Han. And now, he was trapped in between these two powerful parties. Whoever came out the winner of this clash, there was no benefit for him, so of course he was extremely displeased. But Shui Ming was the team leader, so unless he intended to resign from the Discipline Committee, he would have to obey the former's commands. Younger brother disciple Ling Han, I advise you to surrender. Zhonglin moved into an attacking stance. He was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier while Ling Han was only in the 5th layer, so he had absolute confidence he would be able to apprehend Ling Han within 10 moves. Ling Han shook his head and said, You still do not have the ability to apprehend me. Zhonglin could not help becoming infuriated. Indeed, he did not have much of a background, but his power of the 9th layer of element gathering tier was authentic. Otherwise, he would not have been qualified to join the discipline committee in the first place. And now a younger brother disciple with cultivation in the mere 5th layer of element gathering tier actually said that Zhong Lin was not capable of apprehending the former. This doubtlessly was a blow to his pride. Why are you still blabbering? Apprehend him now. And Xue Ming urged. Excuse me then. Zhong Lin made his move, and charged towards Ling Han. Mo Gao wanted to make his move. He knew that this only student of his had an exceptionally high level of comprehension in the art of the sword, but the gap in cultivation levels was a big disadvantage. 6 flashes of sword chi would grant him an extra 3 battle stars of battle prowess at most. But that still did not matter much, as a martial artist of the 8th layer of element gathering tier would still be unable to match an opponent in the 9th layer. However, Ling Han had already stepped forward to take this attack head-on. He did not even draw his sword. Instead, he directly threw out a punch. Pun! The two of them clashed head-on, and a visible shock wave spread out from the point of contact. The two figures retreated at the same time. What? When they saw this happen, everyone's eyes widened in shock, wearing disbelieving expressions. Zhong Lin was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, yet he did not manage to get the upper hand in a head-on clash. How was that possible? How could there be such a powerful martial artist of the 5th layer of element gathering tier? Are you sure you really are in the 5th layer of element gathering tier? I've underestimated you. Zhong Lin instantly looked serious. Though he had no desire to become someone else's weapon, martial artists would of course have their own pride. As a martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, if he could not even apprehend an opponent in the 5th layer of element gathering tier, what would be left of his pride? He took a deep breath and formed his hands into claws. He stretched out his arms to 2 different directions, bent and raised his left leg, looking like an eagle that was stretching out its wings in preparation for flight. Eagles soaring in the sky. He gave a furious shout, and his figure sped forwards, his battle prowess spiking instantly. Battle prowess and cultivation level were 2 completely different matters. From the moment he used his martial arts technique, his battle prowess had spiked up to 10 battle stars. Ling Han only smiled softly, his eyes turning serious, and suddenly, a powerful aura emanated from his figure. What? Zhong Lin could only feel his heart trembling, as if he was a little lamb that had caught the eye of a fierce tiger, and he was left with nothing but endless fear. This move, eagle soaring in the sky, suddenly lost its accuracy, and the deviation from his real target was excessively large. Ling Han nonchalantly aimed a kick at Zhong Lin's behind, and pun! The latter instantly fell onto the ground with a heavy thump, causing a large disturbance to the dust on the ground. Complete silence. In Huyang Academy, Zhong Lin could not be considered an elite, but among those of element gathering tier, his ability was enough to rank him within the top 100 martial artists of element gathering tier. Yet now, he was actually defeated by a mere martial artist in the 5th layer of element gathering tier in one move. How were they supposed to believe their eyes? What a great brat, no wonder he was so arrogant. So it seems that he does indeed have some ability. A cold light gleamed in Xue Ming's eyes. He stepped out and walked forwards. He had decided to make a move himself. Ling Han looked slightly serious at this. And Xue Ming was in the gushing spring tier, and if you converted his battle prowess to the level of element gathering tier, that would at least be 20 stars. Furthermore, this estimate had still not included the upgrade granted from the use of black-grade martial arts techniques. Of course, and Xue Ming may not possess any kind of black-grade martial arts technique. Back down! Mo Gao stood in front of Ling Han, his eyes wide with rage. He had not stepped in previously, but as Ling Han's teacher, he would definitely not just stand by and watch as his own student was humiliated by another. Chapter 112. Chapter 112, Arrival of the Main Character. And Xue Ming hesitated slightly. No matter how much of a piece of trash Mo Gao was, he was still a teacher of the academy. How could he be so easily insulted? Against Ling Han, he had a just cause on his side. Moreover, the stolen goods were already planted well in advance, so Ling Han would have no way to escape. Then, even if he used any rough movements in the process of apprehending Ling Han, so what? Who would actually defend the innocence of a person who had fallen from grace? And Mo Gao, however, was a completely different matter. Teacher, allow me! Ling Han pushed Mo Gao gently to one side. And Xue Ming was indeed very strong, but the second layer of gushing spring tear. He could still manage an opponent of this level. Ling Han! And Mo Gao was extremely astonished. The reason why he had interfered was because he knew that Xue Ming would never dare do anything against him. But Ling Han did not have any trump card to protect himself. No matter how much of a monster he was, he still would not be able to match an opponent in the second layer of gushing spring tear, right? Don't worry, teacher, Ling Han said with a smile, and walked boldly forwards. Ha 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 ha, I have to admit that you are indeed quite brave. And Xue Ming saw that his dilemma was solved without him doing anything and so could not contain his joy. Ling Han shook his head and said, You are just a lackey, what right do you have to bark? Let us see if I won't shatter your whole mouth of teeth. Insolence! And Xue Ming's eyes widened in rage, and he was about to make his move. Being so noisy in the academy, what a scandal! A dignified voice filled with displeasure was heard. Everyone turned around to look at this newcomer, and saw that the speaker was a tall, sturdy man. The man was dressed in embroidered robes, exuding a powerful aura that caused anyone who dared to look upon him feel as if they should take a step back. The third imperial prince, Qi Feng Yun. There was also a crimson-haired beauty following at his heels. She had a very shapely figure, and her lips were the shade of fire. However, this was the third imperial prince's woman, who dared to look at her voluptuous bosom, or spare another look at her slightly raised behind. Greetings, third imperial prince! Everyone fell down onto one knee to pay their salutations to this man who may one day inherit the throne. Yet Ling Han still stood as straight and upright as a spear. There was no one in this world that was qualified to make him kneel. This was the pride that belonged to the powerful warrior of heaven tier he was in his last life. Even if he had changed bodies, even if his cultivation level had dropped drastically, there was no way to change that. He would only keep his temper in check, but would never break his pride. Rise! The third imperial prince lifted his hand slightly, and then asked, What's going on here? In reply to the third imperial prince, and Xue Ming was cheering secretly in his heart. The violet-shaped badge was something that the third imperial prince had gifted to a select few in the first place, and now that the main character was here, Ling Han's punishment would only be even more severe. Most importantly, when they found the violet-shaped badge among Ling Han's belongings later, Ling Han would have no way to deny it, because how could the third imperial prince not recognize his own token? And Xue Ming immediately began to recount the facts of the matter. Of course, according to him, he had received a report from Feng Luo about having lost the token, and so, following the trail of clues left behind, went on to suspect Ling Han, which was why he was here with members of the discipline committee to search Ling Han's room and arrest him for theft. When the third imperial prince finished listening to this tale, an odd expression played about his features. Others may not know, but how could he not know that he had presented Ling Han with a violet badge just the day before, so what need was there for the latter to steal another? Based on his intelligence, he very quickly came to the realization that this matter was an attempt to frame Ling Han for a crime he had not committed. Furthermore, the mastermind behind this trap was very likely Feng Luo. Feng Luo watched all this happen from one side, and when he saw the odd expression on the third imperial prince's face, he thought that the latter was angered, and so he quickly fanned the flames by saying, Your Highness, it's all my fault. I asked for the token from my elder brother, yet did not take care of it properly, which created an opportunity for it to be stolen by a thief. Please punish me, Your Highness. He bowed his head and clasped his hands in the third imperial prince's direction, but a cold smile curled up around the corners of his lips. Even he would have to be punished because of not taking care of the third imperial prince's token properly. So what kind of punishment would a thief like Ling Han get? He, who said he was stupid? He was an expert of the highest grade in this kind of crafty plans and machinations. It was only that he had no use for this kind of thing in the past, as whatever he wanted done would be done with one word from him. The third Imperial Prince cast a meaningful glance at Ling Han, before turning his eyes back to Shui-Ming. So, what do you plan to do? I naturally plan to search Ling Han's room. We have already obtained solid proof that your Highness's token is definitely in his room. And Shui-Ming said confidently. He would of course never think that Feng Yan's brother would dupe him. The third Imperial Prince smiled, and took a look at the other people of the Discipline Committee, and said, Do you all think this way? The others all looked a bit hesitant. In truth, they were all very much confused. They had come all this way here merely because of Shui-Ming's command, so they had no idea what was really going on here. But they all knew about the relation between Shui-Ming and Feng Yan, so when they saw Feng Luo, they had already managed to guess a bit of what was going on. And now, with this question from the third Imperial Prince, they could not help but hesitate. After all, once this issue became bigger, whatever they said now would be testimonial statements. It would be extremely easy for others to take advantage of any loopholes present in their words. Being in the Discipline Committee was a very tempting job. There was no need for them to leave the academy to go on practical training trips, and they'd still be able to earn academic points. Thus, they were naturally envied by a lot of people. We are not really sure. They finally decided to tell the truth. And Shui-Ming instantly gave a cold humph in his heart, but this would not affect anything. As long as he managed to find the violet badge in Ling Han's room, he'd be able to firmly nail this crime on Ling Han's head. He said, Your Highness, this person has continued to put up a stiff resistance against our authority. Please wait while I apprehend him. Wait, Ling Han said and smiled. Do not speak before you think. A good, well-disciplined student like myself is of course most ready to cooperate with the academy. It's just that I don't like the look of you. But since the third Imperial Prince is here, then fine, let's go and search my room. And Shui-Ming was surprised. He never thought that Ling Han would simply submit like this. I have not committed any crime, so my conscience is clear, Ling Han said. And Shui-Ming instantly understood, though he secretly laughed at Ling Han's naivete. This was not something that could be simply solved just because you were innocent. This was fine. When he was caught red-handed, there would be no way for the brat to deny the accusation. The lightest punishment would be being expelled from the academy, or in the best-case scenario, perhaps the third Imperial Prince would act personally to deal with him. Just go die, idiot. Ling Han advanced without fear, while the others followed behind him. Even the third Imperial Prince was no exception to this. If anyone who did not know what was going on saw this, they'd think that Ling Han was the commander of this big group of people. And Shui-Ming very soon realized this, and quickly shot to walk in front of Ling Han, looking at him furiously. Ling Han smiled softly and said, What are you glaring for? Something wrong with your eyes. Plus, why does a mere commoner like you dare to walk in front of the third Imperial Prince? Are you intending to commit treason? Damn, what a serious accusation. And Shui-Ming felt as if he was about to pass out. He only had not wanted to let Ling Han look so awesome, but why was he suddenly smashed with such a large accusation? He secretly shot a glance at the third Imperial Prince, and saw that the latter's expression was indeed a bit dark, causing him to feel even more dizzy. He hurriedly asked, Didn't you also walk in front just now? Nonsense, I'm bringing you all to my room. If I don't walk in front, am I supposed to walk at the back? Has your head been kicked by a mule? Ling Han mocked mercilessly. Cold sweat appeared on Shui-Ming's forehead. Sir Namden, what is your intention? Disrespecting the third Imperial Prince is considered high treason, Ling Han said calmly, yet only made things worse. Do not slander me. And Shui-Ming never thought that a subconscious action of his would allow Ling Han to dig out such a huge problem for him. He hurriedly began to explain, really afraid that this moment of carelessness would be firmly taken grasp of as a weakness of his and used to attack him. Enough, since Ling Han told you to search, why are you all not searching yet? the third Imperial Prince said, his face filled with impatience. Understood. And Xue Ming exhaled a relieved breath. Looks like the third Imperial Prince did not intend to pursue the matter about his unintended disrespectful action. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.